She confirmed live.
Okay, members, thank you. We have a quorum and we're now in live session, and I call the meeting to order. I welcome all members to the 60th meeting of the Committee for Communities. Can I remind anyone in the public gallery mobile phones must be turned off. Mobile tablet devices can however be used through a Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. Password details are available in the gallery for anyone wanting to connect to Assembly's Wi-Fi network. No recordings or photographs may be taken. Can I also remind members about the protocols regarding the use of electronic devices? Please switch all mobile devices to airplane mode and activate Wi-Fi connection. Please also use tablet devices discreetly and in a way which does not interfere with proceedings, and be aware of the cameras when using the tablet device. I would also like to remind you once again about the sensitivity of microphones and to be aware of your screens throughout the course of the meeting. For any members joining via Zoom, can I ask you to be mindful of whether the camera on your device is able to pick up any other people who may not wish to be seen or in the background, or if you wish to blur your background. Can I then move to agenda item 1, which is declaration of interests? I remind members of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Do any members have interest they wish to declare in relation to any of today's agenda items? Go ahead, Melissa.
In relation to Irish language, I'm a member of Conor na Gaeilge and Cahirloch, chairperson of Niscoil na Jeriga preschool through the medium of Irish.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, Chair, just given that we might cut across multiple themes with the Minister, can I declare charity trustee, trade union member, private sector landlord? I think that's it for the moment, but if anything else arises, I'll notify.
Yeah, thank you. I will also declare that I own a property from which I again rent. I'm a member, a trustee of a charity, and I am developing a member's bill on mitigating the threat of homelessness. So just more as to say, we're just taking members' interest at this stage. If there's any interest anyone wishes to declare. Anything else, members? Okay, Morris and Mark, you're okay as well, yeah? Thank you. Okay, members, then moving on to item 2, which is apologies. Are members aware of any apologies? Clerk?
Kelly Armstrong.
Yeah, Kelly Armstrong, Emily, thank you. Okay, chairperson's business then, members. Just to advise that we have an event this afternoon on the sign language bill with members of the deaf-blind community in room 115. This starts at 3:30 and should last around an hour and 30 minutes. I would encourage everyone to attend if possible. Members, I also attended an event last Friday which was hosted by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation in the Mac Theatre on effective approaches to tackling poverty. The clerk and fellow committee member Sean were also in attendance. It was a very useful and interesting event and focused on how poverty has been made a focus on government activities in Scotland and in the South, and what an effective approach to tackling poverty should include. Presentations and a memo on the event with suggested follow-up actions can be found at page 3 of your tabled papers, and I want to thank the clerk for attending that and taking those notes and minutes in what was a very interesting session. Sian, do you want to say anything in relation to that?
Yeah, I found it really interesting, particularly looking at the other devolved regions, so Wales and Scotland. And then in the South, the bit that really stuck out for me was the creation of that Child Poverty and Wellbeing Office to drive that cross-government action, because that's something we've talked about a lot in terms of how we scrutinise across multiple departments. I thought that was just a really interesting approach and something that I'm going to look into a wee bit further in terms of how they've managed that in the South.
Yeah. Okay, members, thank you. Any other comments, members, or members content to note and to take a look at that memo in the table pack? Thank you. Members, I'm conscious of the recent media coverage about the threat to community and voluntary sector funding and the Minister of Finance's efforts with the Treasury in relation to the NI portion of the Shared Prosperity Fund. As a committee, we have been raising concerns on the lack of progress and information on this. There is correspondence on this in Matters Arising at 9.10, which we'll have an opportunity to go through in more detail under the Matters Arising agenda item. And finally, members, this is Book Week, and to mark this event, the Speaker held an event on Tuesday in collaboration with the BBC, which featured a panel of members discussing a book of their choice. I think it is important for the committee to positively acknowledge the vital work and support provided by Libraries NI in all of our communities. I know I've certainly got huge value out of it all my life, and something that's really important to protect and develop indeed and encourage. So I think there's broad agreement from members on that, so thank you. Okay then, members, moving to draft minutes then at agenda item 4. Draft minutes from the meeting on 16th of October are page 7. Are members content to agree the minutes of 16th of October as drafted? Great, thank you, members. Okay, members, so given that we're slightly ahead of time, I propose to move to agenda item 7, which is consideration of the committee report on the pensions bill LCM with members' agreement. If you're content with that. Yeah. So, agenda item 7. Consideration of committee report on pensions bill LCM. Members, you've been provided with a copy of the draft report at page 38. This is the formal consideration before the report is ordered to be printed. I would remind you that we are focusing on the text of the report only, as the team will then address any formatting issues once the text is agreed. I will ask for comments and then agreement on each section of the report, and we'll start with powers and membership at page 40. So are members content with the powers and membership section at page 40? Yep, thank you. I refer members then to the background section of the report, and that's contained at pages 41 to 43. Are members content with those? Content. Yep, thank you, members. I refer members then to the evidence section of the report, and that is contained at pages 43 to 48. Are members content? Yep, thank you. I refer members to the committee consideration of the bill at pages 48 to 50. Are members content with that section? Yep. Thank you, members. And that then therefore does conclude the committee consideration of the draft report, members, and I am required then to put the question formally to you that the Committee for Communities orders the report on the legislative consent memorandum for terminal illness pension ombudsman retrospective actuarial confirmation of benefit changes in brackets Virgin Media pensions dashboard and contractual override 2025 to be published. Are members agreed? Great, thank you, members. I wonder, do we have officials for agenda item 8, or could we move to that?
No officials. There's information in there. You can move to that.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay, I'll proceed on to agenda item 8, members, which is an SL1. And it's an SL1 on the social fund, in brackets Child Funeral Fund number 2, Amendment Regulations, NI 2025. A copy of the SL1 is at page 55. The proposed rule would increase the Child Funeral Fund payment from £3,056 to £3,441. The Child Funeral Fund provides a one-off lump sum to meet the cost of a basic funeral following the death of a child, and that's up to age 18, or a stillbirth after 24 weeks. The regulations are anticipated to be made by 10th of November to enable commencement on 1st of December. For funerals on or before the 30th of November 2025, the lower rate applies, and funerals on or after the 1st of December 2025, the higher rate will apply. So, can I ask the members of any comments or queries which could be followed up in relation to this? I have to say, just on the face of it, I think it's a really good thing that we're seeing an increase there. I know the Assembly are looking at a couple of issues around certification and parental leave around bereavement. So I think it's in keeping with that. So I certainly would have no objection to it. My only comment would be that I think it's positive that it exists and that it's being increased. Any other thoughts, members? No? Well, Ken, then I ask, are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I'm now going to check, do we need to take a short break? Or
Yeah.
So we'll take a short break then. We're not expecting the Minister till 10:15. We're a little ahead of time.
He's here now.
He's here, and is he okay to go ahead? Yeah. Okay.
Go for it.
So, members, then we'll move to the agenda item section relating to the Minister coming to committee today. So,
Aye,
good morning, Minister. Okay. People get settled. Okay. Thank you, members, and thank you, Minister, and your team. And we're moving now to agenda item 5, which is ministerial briefing. Members, there are no papers for this item. It is an oral briefing only. I welcome the Minister to the meeting along with the following officials. The Minister is joined by John Greer, who's Deputy Secretary for Corporate Services Group, Emer Morelli, who's Deputy Secretary with the Engaged Communities Group, and Paddy Rooney, who's Deputy Secretary for Work and Health. Members, as a committee, we have agreed to take a thematic approach to questions for the Minister in the following categories. So we're looking at strategies, a range of the social strategies. We're looking at sports. We're looking at housing. And we are looking at a section where other items might come up that don't fit into any of those categories. A bit of a wrap-up potentially for members in relation to that. So to ensure all members get an opportunity to ask their questions, please indicate at the beginning of each theme or category if you wish to ask a question, as I will be allocating times out to the names that have indicated. So you're very welcome, Minister. Do you want to make any opening remarks today? Or?
No, I'm happy to go straight to your questions, Mr. Chairman. In the past, we've maybe allocated an hour, and I've been very generous and gone beyond that, but unfortunately I do have a cut-off at 11:15 today because, as you'll be aware, it is Book Week, and I'm going to read to some primary school children. If you're interested, it's The Incredible Book Eating Boy, is the story that I will be reading, and if we have time, I'm more than happy to read that to the committee at the end as well.
Well, I suspect time isn't going to particularly allow, but it's a generous offer.
Very welcome.
So, Minister, I suppose given we're starting off with social inclusion strategies and timelines, there is, I'm sure you're aware, a growing concern that time is running out in relation to the mandate, and some of these strategies may not be completed by the end of the mandate. So in relation to the disability strategy, I understand that's at an advanced stage. Can you give an update about when it will go out for public consultation?
So I'm pleased to inform the committee that I received executive approval last week for the disability strategy to go out to consultation. We're currently finalising that, and it's still our expectation that will go out to consultation in early November. But there's certainly no indication at this moment in time that that's not something that we'll be able to complete by the end of the mandate.
Okay, I'm going to move to other members' questions then. So Pam, Cameron, Melissa and Nicola indicating at this point. Pam, go ahead.
Chair, thank you, Minister, for your attendance today. It's a first for me with you in front of me, so you're very welcome. Minister, currently 1 in every 6 people in Northern Ireland are aged 65 years and older. And no, I'm not declaring interest at this point, in case you can remember. I'm only coming 54. So 65 and older. By 2043, nearly a quarter of the population will be over 65, a huge number. So as you and the committee will know, that the active ageing strategy is one of the 5 departmental social inclusion strategies, and I do welcome the fact that you've progressed with a new and a refreshed action plan under this strategy, and I'm sure you'll take the opportunity to work alongside the Commissioner for Older People as well. But however, given this stark statistic, do you feel that there's enough being done, and do you think that this committee and the Assembly is, and I say this as a new member of the committee, has given sufficient attention and focus to this particular strategy given those stark statistics?
I don't think that we have given it enough attention in recent years, and that's what I was determined to change. We do have a growing population, as you've outlined, over the age of 65, and I think it is important that we have those policies in place because there are particular challenges that older people face, and it's also a manifesto commitment of ours to make sure that we progress this issue. So, as you've rightly outlined, there has been a refreshed action plan that's being created to build on the existing strategic framework that was already there, but that will be updated. We will have new priorities in there, we will have targeted actions, and that will be there to address some of the gaps that we see within the evaluation that has been identified. The different departments are being asked to nominate age-friendly leads so that we can ensure that we have coordinated delivery and that stronger visibility as well of actions across the departments. We will take insights from the innovation labs and pilot engagement sessions as well with older people to ensure that lived experience as we have and other aspects in other strategies helps informs policy development. We will also need additional staff to carry that out, and I'll make sure that is there. So it is an important one. It has often been forgotten. We talk a lot about the social inclusion strategies, but those haven't always included the age strategy, which you're right to highlight.
Thank you,
Okay,
Minister.
thank you, Pam.
And I'm content for now. I'll have another one on housing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fine.
we'll come to
Yeah.
we'll be coming to housing, yes. So Melissa, Nicola, Sean and Mark.
Fáilte rud aire, you're welcome, Minister, agus fáilte rud Fern Foster, and welcome to your team as well. Minister, could you give a brief update on the progress of the Irish language strategy, the gender equality strategy, and the sexual orientation strategy?
Okay. On the language strategies, those are being taken forward in accordance with how we outlined before, and actually with the timelines as well. We're largely in step with what I'd previously set out. That is currently with the cross-departmental working group. Individual departments are looking at the work that had previously been produced, and we expect that to come back to us in, when's the rough timeline for that one? Emer?
6 to 7 months.
6 to 7 months, and we're nearing the end of that process. So we're expecting that.
We're expecting that, and within this mandate.
Oh, certainly.
There's 6 or 7 weeks or months.
So the cross-departmental working group has been re-established with all executive departments have nominated senior officials. That is working through the process and is partly way through that process now. It will be coming then to the Minister for his review, but all the departmental ministers have to sign off on their specific actions before it comes to Minister for his final review. So we give ourselves 6 to 7 months working time for the cross-departmental group. They've been established, so we're halfway through that process, as Minister says. So we're expecting that work to come through.
I thought they were established in January time. So are we
I
not?
only got executive approval for that in late May.
in May, yeah.
Okay. So, well, given that, are we not at the 6 or 7 months?
So we're reaching, probably by the end of this financial year, our target date, but then that will have to go then through all the various ministers, our minister, and then ultimately the executive.
And the other strategies, the gender equality and the sexual orientation strategy?
I'm currently considering options to take those forward. The priority in the first instance was the anti-poverty strategy and the disability strategy. We had a good meeting, probably one of the best meetings that I've actually had during my time in office was with some of the representatives of the LGBT organisations. Last week or maybe the week before. I think it was one of the best meetings because it was frank and it was open, and we really got down into the issues, and there was a real freedom to discuss the positions that they held and where I was coming from on that as well. Look, there'll be a lot of issues where we will not agree on this, and I mean, when I mean me, I mean myself and those in that organisations. We have seen some of the work that came forward from the co-design group, and there are issues that I have a serious problem with some of their proposals, for example around so-called gender affirming healthcare, and whether that's HRT or puberty blockers and surgeries and psychological and other medical interventions that would be proposed in that. Some of the other controversial issues around RSE in schools and other issues which I don't believe are unique to people simply because of their sexual orientation or their identity, such as the provision of housing. But we had a good discussion, and I had asked the group to engage further with officials and to really tie down their asks and say, this is what we need for our community. So I believe that work's going to happen very soon, and then we'll consider the way forward and consider whether there is something there that can be taken forward to the executive.
Okay, thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and to your officials for attending here today. You'll know that the Irish Language Strategy Co-Design Group presented to the committee last week, and it was quite clear that they were very frustrated at the lack of delivery they've been witnessing since 2006 and since the St Andrews Agreement for the Irish Language Strategy to be delivered. They've since issued 2 judicial reviews, which they have won, basically saying the executive haven't met their legal obligations, and in fact I think a third has been heard this week. And as I say, they feel like they haven't been engaged with throughout the process and are extremely frustrated, along with other sectors, including the LGBTQ plus sector, in regards to those other strategies that Melissa had mentioned. So this obviously leaves an effect with the Irish language community, that they feel like you're dealing with them in a hostile kind of way. What are you doing as Minister of Languages to actually change their perception and to instill some confidence that actually you're going to deliver for people who want to see the Irish language flourish and are working hard in their own capacity to do that there?
And look, let me be very clear. I do not object whatsoever to anyone learning a language or speaking a language or celebrating the Irish language, and I know that there are a lot of cultural issues that come with that as well, and people are very proud of that, and I don't stand in the way of that in any way. What I want to make sure is that what we do is proportional, what we do is affordable, and what we do is not seen as an imposition on other people. And look, we've had debates in this place recently, and we're not going to rehearse that again today, but there is concern about how the Irish language has been weaponised, and I think that we need to step away from any of those sorts of actions that we put in place that could cause further alienation. I can't help what people's perceptions are. Some people come in with their own perceptions. I have treated everyone equally when it comes to these issues, whether it's the Ulster Scots language, culture and heritage strategy or the Irish language strategy. They've gone through the exact same process, as has the anti-poverty strategy, as has the sexual orientation as well. It has now been made more complex by the fact that a JR is taking place. I'm not going to get in to the details of that other than to say it doesn't help progress anything. The process has been in place. So look, we'll see how that all goes, but in the meantime the work is continuing within the departments for them to bring forward their proposals, because it's not a DFC strategy, it's an executive one.
Minister, with all due respect, this is the Irish language strategy has been agreed and approved since 2006. That's 19 years, almost 20 years that the Irish language community have been waiting for this here. So there is something that you should be doing as Minister for Communities to actually deliver that there. Yes, it might be across the executive, but you are the minister responsible for that there. And so surely you can understand how the Irish language community feel that they are being disrespected and disadvantaged because of that there.
Well, first of all, an Irish language strategy wasn't agreed in 2006. It was agreed that there would be one. There wasn't a strategy that was agreed at this time. That's why you have to create it. That's why there have been so many difficulties, not only in terms of the language strategies, but anti-poverty has been in the exact same position for the same amount of time, because there hasn't been that agreement in the past. And I have no doubt then that if you're saying that blame should fall at my door for the lack of progression on this, you would also have the same words for your Sinn Féin predecessors, the Sinn Féin predecessors in my department as well. So I've set out the action that is taking place, and I'm just assuring you that what I will be doing will be making sure that what we bring forward is fair, because let's face it, we don't have fairness in terms of language right now in Northern Ireland. I don't think that we have taken the right approach. Look at what Belfast City Council have done in particular, where the majority can be cast aside in terms of what a smaller minority.
Okay, Minister. So we don't have time. We don't have time.
You know where I'm coming from on that. I want something that works.
Unfortunately, I do know where you're coming from, and I'm actually extremely concerned now based on what you've said. So you have told us that basically you're tolerant of people going off and learning the Irish language. You've referred to it as an imposition. you've said it's not, you're the Minister with responsibility for developing a strategy to promote the Irish language. You've removed it from your department's letterhead and logos on the basis that it was cost saving, and we have correspondence to say that you don't even know what any savings might be. So I don't know how you made that decision. But I'm extremely worried now, Minister, that what you're really doing is setting your face against bringing forward an Irish language strategy. That appears to be the case.
No, I think that's what you want it to appear like, so that you can use it to attack me. I've actually just
Not
set
at all.
out. That's exactly what you're doing, because I've just set out exactly what I'm doing in the process that I'm going through. I did not say that language was in a position. I've said some people have used it to impose on others. Some people have used it as a weapon of cultural dominance, and that exactly is what people in your party have said in the past. So you can understand why some people are a little bit sceptical of some of the approaches that have been taken by parties.
Do you understand why the
parties
sector are sceptical?
Parties like yourself. You can say to me, why are they sceptical? Well, should they have been sceptical during Sinn Féin's time in office when there was no progression? Was there an Irish language strategy brought forward during that time?
Well, Minister, you're the person responsible for development now, and the mood music that you are setting out here today would not give the sector any encouragement, in my opinion.
Chair, can I just
Very briefly, because I have other members to bring in.
The previous ministers did meet with those relevant to the Irish language strategy. That was one of the concerns was raised last week, was your reluctance to meet with the heads of those there groups. So that was one of the major factors.
There was an agreement to meet, and then they decided to go down the route of JR. So again, you maybe want to congratulate your Sinn Féin predecessors for having met with them. Regardless, it's going through a process, and we'll see where that leads.
Okay, Sian.
Thank you. As someone who doesn't belong to a party that had a former minister, I have no skin in that game, but when I hear the weapon of cultural dominance refer to that concerns me as someone who educates my children through the Irish language, who sees their literacy skills enhanced, who sees their cognitive development, and that is my primary concern and was my primary concern, and I see the value of that. I'm not someone that looks at cultural dominance, however I see the value of that without it being political. The weaponisation has happened for me on both sides, and I think that has to be addressed as well, or that has to be acknowledged. It's not just previous ministers. I just want to point that out, because that struck a wee chord with me, Minister, when you said that cultural dominance.
I wasn't referring specifically to you, Sian, but it has happened in the past,
but
and
that
it is an
genuinely
issue.
worries me. That concerns me. That is something, and I said it in the chamber. My children singing Baba Kirigoo, Baba Black Sheep is no weapon for anybody, and that talk about cultural dominance just it hits the heart of it, because I believe the Irish language is something exceptional and beautiful, and to hear it being politicised.
By the way, I don't believe it should be politicised. I wish it didn't have
Chair,
the connotations that it did either, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, it just makes me quite emotive when I hear language like that. So I do want to see it being brought forward, and I think the nearing of the end. But I suppose for me, where will that sit then in terms of once we get the cross-departmental working group feedback? Where will that sit within the department's budget? Where's the allocations for that? Is there any resource currently being set aside for anything that comes out of the Irish language strategy?
So obviously this is going to be an executive strategy, so ministers in the first instance will need to bring forward their proposals, and there will be an expectation that they would have an understanding in terms of these strategies, how that would be budgeted for. If there are additional measures that need to be looked at, then it would be up either to individual departments to ensure that they can find that funding from within their own baselines, or that there would need to be an agreement from the executive that more finance would be given. So that's why it is right that departments actually take the time to consider this. Look, it's the exact same approach that's been taken with all of the different strategies. We can't just plop something down and say, okay, we'll all agree to that, and we don't know what the costings are, and we don't know whether it's possible for us to do it exact same with anti-poverty as well. So I'm taking this one stage at a time. Let's see what comes back from departments. Let's see what they think is realistic, what's appropriate for a government department to get involved in, what's credible, doesn't meet those tests as well that others will want to see met. So we do expect that back, and then we'll take that forward.
Okay, so another one of the concerns
Briefly,
I have around the strategies is the intersectionality, if they're being taken individually. We know that gender plays a huge part in terms of poverty. We know that disability plays a huge part in terms of poverty. How is the department, if we're looking at these strategies in their kind of their isolation in a sense, people experiencing those multiple kind of forms of exclusion, how is the department going to address that intersectionality?
I don't see it in that way, because I think that they are all connected together. None of these are in isolation. The same way in which the anti-poverty strategy doesn't look at poverty in isolation, but rather in the round, and how all the departments interconnect has been really important. So I see them all working together in that way, and I don't see them standing in isolation. I think we already have an example of that in terms of the housing supply strategy, which you may think is heavily DFC, but does include and requires the work of other departments together. You're already seeing how they're working together across issues, and I actually think we often have this thrown up that you're all working in silos. I've been a member of a number of different assembly committees over the time, and a number of different departments, and I think there has been better genuine cross-departmental working than I've seen before. I know that's not a popular thing to say, because we like to pretend we're all siloed, but actually there has been better working together.
I see it as a positive. I have one last very quick question.
Very brief, Sean.
Anti-poverty strategy, where
Yes.
are we? Is it changing?
So anti-poverty strategy was out in draft form for consultation. Consultation is closed. The analysis is still ongoing. I'm looking forward to getting that information out there about the responses that came in to that. We will then consider those. We will go before the executive. I've always said there are things that we might want to add, take away, as we will do over the lifetime of the strategy anyway. I know that you'll want to see more things in there. We need to know how to fund those as well. I'm going to make sure that if we're putting something on the table, that we're going to have the funding in place and we're going to be delivering, because the last thing people need is empty promises.
When do you expect to be back to the executive with the next stage
Of
of the anti-poverty
anti-poverty
strategy?
strategy. We'll have to analyse the responses, go back to departments. I don't know if you have a particular time frame in mind on that,
So,
Emer.
Minister gave a commitment that the consultation would be a real consultation, that we would listen to views, we would listen to stakeholders. Once we have that analysis, that process has to happen. So while we would always aim to be to the executive as early as we can, as Minister said, it has to be a coherent product that we are taking into the executive. So I don't want to give a sense of a long delay, but time will have to be taken to work through the consultation and see what it means, and engage with those key stakeholders also that have made their views known through that process.
Will it be within this year, do you think, Emer? Like, is that realistic?
Well, depending on how we work through, I would say financial year potentially, but we could be looking in to early into the next financial year.
I can give you the assurance I want this to be done as quickly as possible. I'll do that within the parameters that are there, but there'll be no dragging on our part whatsoever.
I may, sorry through the chair, maybe to address some of the points. There's a dedicated team of staff who have been engaged through all of these strategies, centred in the department, who are aware of the development, engaged in the development of all the strategies, who are aware of the intersectionality and bring it together as best they can to inform and advise Minister. And I think it's really important too on the language strategies. Both of the strategies are through the same process, to the same timetable, and there is no dilution of that within the department.
Okay, thank you. Mark, and on Zoom there, go ahead, Mark, please.
Just following up maybe on the point Emer had made there about the dedicated team working across the strategies. I don't doubt the dedication of that team, but is the team adequately resourced, I suppose, given the volume and import of the strategies we're talking about here, Minister?
I believe so, yes. That's my understanding, because I've asked to make sure that they have been properly resourced. I'm not getting any alternative view here. It'd be quite embarrassing if the officials are going to tell me now that they need more funding, but
Not at
you
all.
can make your pitch if you want, Emer.
No, we are adequately funded. We are resourced with the teams. Minister has provided additional resource, particularly on the active ageing strategy. We've been given additional resource. We've been given additional resource across the whole area through an appointment of a senior civil servant working to me to lead this work. This Minister has prioritised this work.
So it's been prioritised, and this is the pace that would be worrying, because these are more than political commitments, they are legal obligations. And as regards the analysis of the responses to the consultation on the draft anti-poverty strategy, will that analysis be published at any stage?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Morris.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, Morris, hearing you fine, thank you.
Chair, my question's around benefit fraud and error. Is it okay to ask it now, or do you want to wait till later?
I think wait till that other section, Morris, maybe it fit into that other section, but we'll put you down for that and come back to you at that point. Okay, thank you. Andy, you looking in on the strategies?
Yes, Chair. Just one point, Minister, really, because most of the other points have been touched on, but there has been a commonality across all of the co-design groups that's engaged with us of frustration at the process, and I don't doubt how challenging it's been given the wide range of views across all of the strategies, but is the department doing any work to better understand those frustrations and to build that into future processes moving forward, because their frustrations have been loud and clear to us, and some have questioned how the process has worked?
Yeah, I can understand those frustrations, Andy. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, and we picked up on those. Very early on, the decision was taken based on advice that because of the stages we were at nearly all of these strategies after the co-design groups had largely completed their work, that to then meet with them would have taken considerable ministerial time, because there were multiple groups, both lots of them as individual groups and as collectives that wanted to meet, and you're talking tens and tens and tens of groups with different interests. And we said, we've got the information. What we're doing right now anyway is just sending it out to the departments to ask them for their feedback and their input and what's possible, and then we would have a further consultation if necessary for them to have their own views. So that was what we thought was the right process. We appreciate the frustrations, but in no way were their views not made known or heard, because of the work that they had already done and the correspondence that they had sent to us and the public commentary that others had made. So I can understand frustrations not getting a face-to-face meeting, but it doesn't mean that we weren't very much aware of their concerns.
Yeah, I think, and I suppose the point I make, Minister, it's not so much about you not meeting with them, and I get the vast array of groups and the difficulty that would have presented, but it's that piece around what their understanding of what the department conveyed to them at the outset and what then they see as coming out the other end is what I'm more looking at, and maybe just better understanding. I appreciate obviously the team are focused on the process around getting the strategies out, but I think a piece of work needs to be done if it hasn't already been done, or better understanding that and where the pressure points were, and if those groups fully believe that the co-design process as originally set out has worked as it should, because I don't feel that they do.
I think that's right, and look, we will take learning from this as well. Obviously there's been a change of approach and there's been a change of ministers within that time as well, and obviously the break that was in there that and the work that took place at that stage also. Like, I do value the work that was done, but ultimately that co-design process gets to its limit, because it goes from what people's aspirations are into, right, what is it that government can actually deliver and what can we agree on, and you have to get into that stage at some time, and I know that's where the frustration has come from, because maybe of a difference of view of what co-design looks like, but there obviously has to be a point in the process where this goes into, right, what can we agree on, what can be done, what is affordable. I think that's where some of the frustrations come from, but I understand that.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Minister, moving on now to sport and issues around sporting issues. Can I check, did you meet with Casement Park Project Board on Friday, or have you met with them recently?
No, the First Minister had said publicly last week that I was going to meet with them, but that wasn't the case. There was no agreement for me to meet with them. The department did meet with some of those involved, and that took place on Friday.
Okay, so how did that then, what was the outcome of that, and what are the next steps in relation to that process?
Well, I wasn't at the meetings, maybe Emer,
yeah.
Let me just give a brief outline. This is mostly around strategic need and capacity, issues around proposed stadia and next steps. So,
So the meeting on Friday was part of the overall project management structures that we have set up in the department. I'm SRO for the project, and really it was to restate, revisit the strategic need for the project going forward, and to understand, I suppose, the overarching vision for the project in advance of a project board, which will be held now in early November. And really to make sure that we have everyone engaged on the same process, the same piece. This is obviously a partnership approach that we are undertaking with the Ulster Council for the GAA. A key part of that work is the commitment to the final, I suppose, strategic need and the regionality piece around Casement Park, and our shared understanding of what that means. And the UCGAA then they did finalise their vision and their strategic need position to allow the project board to have that discussion in November.
Okay, thank you. I'm going into our Deputy Chair, Nicola Brogan. Go ahead.
Chair. And Minister, I just want to go on to the NI Football Fund. And you'll know that lots of soccer clubs were naturally very frustrated at being left out of the fund, and are asking now, alongside us, for total transparency around the process. And you yourself had previously indicated in the Chamber anyway that you would publish as much information as possible in regards to that, and that included the options paper that you received from your officials, and advice from your officials, and the report from the external moderator, and also the scores that each club received. Pardon me. When will you publish this information?
Well, you'll now be aware the department has received pre-action protocol correspondence in relation to the selection process of the prioritised cohort for the performance programme within the football fund. So information and documentation in relation to the selection process, including the options presented, is being withheld, because we don't want to prejudice in any way the ongoing legal process. However, I am content that the external moderator report be provided to the committee, though I'd have asked that this document would be treated as confidential and not for publication, as it does contain information about scoring which may be commercially sensitive for clubs wishing to make applications for funding. And I'm happy to confirm also, I think it was one of the questions that was asked, that the external moderator did not require or recommend any changes to the scores or merit order as determined by the internal scoring process. Look, I have been very, very open about this in the past. I went to the Chamber for a statement. I have been extensively on media in relation to this and regarding the process. I hope you'll understand that I can't go into too much further detail now because of the ongoing legal action. I do want to be as transparent as I can, but that has prevented us from going a little bit further.
As far as I'm aware, that action isn't actually active yet. There's no date set, so I think maybe as a committee we could actually seek some legal advice on what information we can actually request and receive at this here stage. But I appreciate that, Minister, and it would be good to get that report from the external moderator.
Yeah, well, we have received pre-action protocol correspondence, so
okay.
That's...
And there's a number of other specific questions the committee have with you as well. Do you have any indication as to when those will be provided to committee?
So a number of other queries were raised. I'll just see if I can go through some of these. You had also asked of evidence of any ministerial engagement undertaken with the aim of securing alternative sources of funding. I'm happy to provide that information, the dates and times of meetings that I had. There's also a question as to why was the sub-regional economic plan disregarded when it came to criteria and decisions for the programme. I would contend that it was not disregarded. The plan recommends that executive budgets should be targeted regionally, but also recognises that funding must be allocated on the basis of need. It's concerned with departmental budgets and alignment with priorities at a local level, and it does not mandate region-based budget sharing. You had also asked what liaison is ongoing between the Department of Finance regarding budgets for the fund, and what assurances, if any, were given on the budget and the extent of over-planning associated with this fund. I can confirm I have met recently with the Finance Minister, and that was on the 29th of September, to discuss budgets and pressures in relation to sports funding. I think those were the questions that were asked, but we'll check those again and check what information can or can't be given on those.
Yeah, so if you have that, then we would expect to receive the written response, the detailed written response. Okay, thank you. I'm going to Sian and then an indication from Andy.
I would just really like to get a bit of an understanding about how the department sets its priorities around sport, and how you prioritise certain sports. So is there for want of a better phrase, like a hierarchy of sports that the department kind of sees as kind of they're most willing to support and then trickles down, or what way do you filter your priorities around sport?
I don't have a hierarchy. I'm not involved in any of those decisions, I suppose, with a couple of exceptions. So obviously we're taking on the previous commitments that had been made in 2011. So we've talked about Casement Football Fund already, but largely we make the allocation to Sport NI, and it is up to them then to determine the budget. It is not for me as Minister to pick out my favourite sports and say I think money should go here or there or wherever else it may be. I suppose some of the control that I have exercised, and again it's not for me to decide which sports would be in relation to the Olympic Legacy Fund, and that came about as a meeting that I had in Paris last year with Hannah Scott, who had told me about some of the concerns that she had about the funding of grassroots sport in Northern Ireland, and that led first of all to the Olympic Medalist Fund, so that those that were successful at the Olympics were able to give money to some of the local clubs that had supported them well, and I've also developed the Olympic Legacy Fund, which is essentially trying to get more money into grassroots sport as well. So there's that £1 million fund, but in terms of a hierarchy or ministerial allocation of funding for sports, that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Thank you, Sian. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. 2 points, if I may, just further to Sian's point there, Minister, and obviously I appreciate the funding is distributed through those governing bodies, but has the department done any analysis now, perhaps declare an interest as somebody who's involved in disability sport at the distribution of that, to make sure that those underrepresented sports are getting a fair opportunity? Certainly I would engage with a lot of people who feel within the disability sphere some sports are not receiving the same level of support and funding. Thus far, they don't have the same level of opportunity.
I'm really passionate about this as well, Andy, and that's one of the reasons why I did bring forward a disability strategy, and sport plays an important role in that. I don't have the figures to hand, but we will write to you with any information on that, and I know that Sport and I take this seriously as well, and like I say, I'm not aware of what the exact figures are. We'd probably be able to break that down to a degree, because one of the great things is that many of our sports clubs operate opportunities for people with disabilities within them overall, as well as I suppose disability specific clubs and disability specific sports. But I can assure you this is something I'm very passionate about, because I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to take part in sport, and that they should be able to share in the physical and mental health benefits that come from that. So more than happy to provide that information, right, but I'm sorry I don't have the breakdown, if you like, today.
No, thanks, Minister, and I look forward to getting that and analysing it. If we can maybe pivot back then to the Northern Ireland Football Fund, and given obviously that over-provision piece around the first phase of the Football Fund, and particularly then looking at the next phases, the grassroots and women's game, and those different pieces. Given that the fund, the 36 million, has been, there's that over-provision, that phase of it around grassroots and other cohorts is going to be entirely contingent upon you receiving additional funding, and if so, when are we likely to see that coming forward?
Well, look, it's just, I think, goes to show you the huge need that there is in sport more generally, and obviously football specifically as well. We have the ring fence budget of £36.2 million, and no decisions have been taken in regard to ring fencing those for specific sectors. Some of that's down to the profiling of time as well and when it can be spent. But I also think there are opportunities, particularly around the National Football Centre to look at other sources of funding for that as well. So we don't have those specific strands yet at that time. But that's obviously why I'm going to be looking at, as I said in the chamber, looking at my own budget, looking at alternative sources of finance, both private and public, and borrowing.
In terms of that planning piece, though, for the performance phase of the scheme, surely the department has some idea as to the amount that's going to allocate to that, and obviously I know there's that over provision piece, but surely the department must know roughly what it's going to allocate to the performance strand.
We haven't made any allocations at this stage. Emer, this is you're involved in the over planning issues and looking at those figures. Is there anything you want to add on that?
So we, and as SRO again for the TNIF programme, I took advice on what level of over planning could be tolerated in the programme. That has resulted in the amount of schemes we were able to take through. I think it's very important to say, as Minister said, we're in the due diligence stage now of the project. The grassroots and the the football training centre will also be taken forward. So we are not just taking forward the performance strand and leaving the others at a standstill. But no expenditure decision has been taken yet. The process has opened on one. We will provide advice to the Minister in due course on how we take forward the grassroots and the training centre, but that work is in development at the moment.
How long is due course?
We would hope to be able to provide advice to Minister very soon on that. So again, I chaired the project board for that yesterday. That should be bringing forward recommendations and proposals soon.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, valiant effort, Andy, but due course is very soon. I don't think you're getting anything more than that at present. So, Morris, can I just check, is your hand still up from the previous time in relation to your other question?
Yeah, Chair, I have a question on the football fund.
Okay, so
okay with you.
So go you ahead, Morris. I also have Mark coming in there quite late on that, so please be brief, both of you, if you can. Thank you.
I will be brief. Can I ask the Minister just the impending actions on the football fund? Does that mean that the football fund is halted until such times as that action is either concluded or takes place?
It doesn't mean it's halted. There's still work that we can do, but obviously that'll have to be kept under review.
Okay, and just a wee add-on, Chair, I'm very, very brief. I'm very keen to understand the methodology of grassroots football when the Minister's team has an opportunity to explain that to us. I'd be very keen to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris.
Wait for that to happen, yep.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, go ahead briefly, please.
Hi, Chair. I'm renowned for coming in late on the football field. Now I've come in late on the football fund. Now, Minister, you've said there's answers that can't be given or information that can't be disclosed due to commercial sensitivity. Just wondering, could you expand on that a wee bit? Obviously, I can't ask you or expect you to give me the detail, but at least the nature of what exactly might be commercially sensitive and how.
Well, I am prepared to give that to you, Mark. I'm just asking that you would treat that confidentially because of the commercially sensitive information. So within the application forms, they will have provided information about their plans that would fall into that category. So I'm taking a bit of a chance here, and I'm saying I'm prepared to give this information to the committee. I hope that will be treated confidentially. That's certainly what I hope for. I don't know if I'm asking too much on that, but I want to provide you with the information I can.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, members, moving on then to housing issues. So, Minister, we all know that there is severe financial pressures on the executive, and it's impacting on the social housing development programme. One of the potential solutions is the possibility of giving the housing executive the ability to borrow. Can you share any updates on where that discussion is presently?
It's fair to say this is one of my biggest frustrations so far in my time in office. I believe that we have consistently given the Department of Finance and the government all of the information they need to allow us to proceed with the changes that are necessary. I seem to continually come up against a brick wall on this. To be fair to the Secretary of State, he has shown a willingness to engage, but ultimately I want us to get to the stage where we can all sit down round a table and thrash out what the difficulties are, because to me and my team and to the housing executive, these issues are very clear and straightforward, and we need simple confirmation from them that what we are planning to do is allowed under Treasury rules, which we believe that it is. Others, I think those within the Treasury, are saying that it is more complex than that, but we have not been able to get to the bottom of it. So I'm wanting to get us to the place that we're all on the same page, that we sit down and see how this can be taken forward. I think this is an issue now where everyone around this table has agreed on the urgency on this, the importance of getting this done and getting it done quickly. Yes, so that we can build new homes, but I think even more pressing at the minute is so that we can do the necessary work in terms of retrofitting and improving existing homes. This goes back to poverty and many of the other issues that we have discussed as well. So I am unrelenting in bringing this to ministers, to bringing it to everybody's attention. I think that the Finance Minister is on board and is trying to be helpful on this. I believe the First and Deputy First Minister are behind this as well. I believe this committee is, and I will welcome, it is your job to advise and assist me in this role, and I would very much appreciate your assistance in making as much noise about this as possible, because we need to get it sorted out.
Okay, and in your opinion, to what extent would the revitalisation of the housing executive be a game changer in this space?
Be a huge game changer in terms of the access to the funding that we would require, especially in terms of retrofitting, but longer term, so that we can build more homes. It is a no-brainer. I don't particularly like that phrase, game changer, because it's so often overused or misused, or people don't actually understand what it is. This actually can be. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but it makes a huge, huge difference. And when you look at so many of the issues that we face, I think that especially in regards to fuel poverty, goes back to the quality of our homes. And nothing is more important for people than giving them the stability of a safe, secure, warm home. And this helps massively in this regard. So I'm happy to say it publicly today. I really hope that the Treasury are listening, that the government are listening, that the Northern Ireland office are listening. This is a change that we need. I believe there's unnecessary hold up. Get on with it. Help us get this done. We're not holding out our hand asking for a capital injection. We're not being irresponsible in any way. We're simply saying, let us be treated the same way other people are being treated. And Mr. Chairman, I hope we could genuinely work together on this and finding a way to keep the pressure on, and any assistance that your committee give will be appreciated.
Okay, thank you,
Can
Minister.
I just come in on the housing executive piece quickly, if you don't mind?
Very briefly, Andy.
Minister, what do you understand to be the issue? You said there's unnecessary hold-up, but what do you understand to be the issue?
I think that there is a concern among some in Treasury that this will add to the debt figures, essentially, of the UK, and that there may be impacts as well for other.
And I assume the executive has provided information to the contrary to push back on that.
This is why I feel that we are going round in circles. I feel as if we are continually giving this information, and I'm getting impatient. And I feel that's why we need to get everybody together and get them around the table.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have Pam, Sian, Melissa and Mark. So maximum brevity, please, members. Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. And on the same topic, and you'll be more than aware what people are living with and dealing with, not just as a Minister, but as an MLA in your own right too, with your own constituents. But I mean, I have constituents, with damp, mould, even rodent infestation, living in appalling conditions, and it's really, really not acceptable, and it's not a living state that any of us would want to put up with, and clearly adding to that fuel poverty and the need to inject those energy efficiency measures into homes, in particular the housing executive stock, and break down the cost of heating homes. So what specifically I wanted to ask you about was, in terms of that housing executive revitalisation programme, do you know when the action plan will be in place? And can you tell us if that plan can or will make a difference to those living in these unacceptable conditions?
You're right, this is really important, and in fact my first mandate in the Assembly, it was a motion that I actually brought to the floor about how we can make sure that our homes are fit for purpose. The other frustrating thing is, in relation to the question that you ask, is that we are ready to go. The Housing Executive haven't been sitting around waiting for this change to come in to then decide what to do. They have a plan in place. They know where they can go immediately and the decisions that they can start to take immediately, which just adds to the frustration overall. But yes, absolutely, plans in place that can start to make a difference, and I believe all of our constituents deserve that.
Thank you, Pam. Sean.
Myself and the chair were at a Joseph Rowntree roundtable, and the right to buy was discussed in terms of being ruled out in other nations, having greatly impacted their availability of social housing. Is there any movement, and is the department engaging in any evidence gathering around right to buy and how it's impacting social housing numbers?
Yes, I've stated my position that I believe it should stay in place, but I did say to the committee, I think one of the last times I was here, that I want to look at the criteria for that. Officials have done some work, and that'll be coming to me very soon to see whether there are any changes that we can make in regards to that, and that might be important in terms of impact that it can make around the edges, but ultimately we still need to have homes for people, whether they're buying their own or in social homes. I want to see more homes built across Northern
Ireland. Have any conversations been had with the Housing Executive around changing priority need rules for refugees and asylum seekers?
I'll have to come back to you on that. I'm not sure what conversations have taken place. We've had some, I think, discussions around that issue in some of the meetings that we've had, but I'd want to answer your question accurately on that, so we'll make a note to come back to you.
Because there's concerns within the sector that conversations are being had and that priority need rules are being changed.
I think questions have maybe been put down around that. It's not flagging immediately with me what that might have been. I'm happy to provide that to you.
I have one final question around housing, and it is around your HMO statement. Can you give us the justification or the reasoning of why asylum seekers were pointed out when there are issues, multiple issues with HMOs amongst other cohorts of renters?
Yeah, I think this statement was taken out of context a bit. I don't know whether that was deliberate or not. There was a section on immigration and asylum. I also mentioned students and the issues there as well. So this was portrayed, I think, as an attack on people. It wasn't. It was trying to deal with landlords that are misusing the situation. And I make no apology for it. I think that we should adhere to the law, obey the law, and those that fall foul of it need to be appropriately dealt with. I thought the statement got out of hand a bit. I even had my own personal faith, I believe, called into question by some of the comments that were made. And this happens again and again. Just because I believe that the law should be enforced is not a commentary on any other issue. It's up to others to answer.
No, and I don't disagree with you around the law. Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. I don't think that the statement came across in the way that you potentially wanted it to then, hearing that, because there was definitely more emphasis put on asylum seekers and immigration than landlords.
It's because Mears was mentioned and questions.
There's whole paragraphs, Minister, and I think that's where the concern was.
We'll have to move along. Melissa, go ahead, Lana.
Minister, I'm sure you and every MLA and every councillor can appreciate the difficulty that families experience at the very strict succession policy, particularly when we have young family members who have lived in their family home for many years, but who have had to leave their home because of the current succession policy. In light of this, do you have plans to review the succession policy, Minister?
I'll always keep that under review. Look, I fully appreciate the difficulties that this causes for people, but there does need to be a balance. We have a huge need for certain types of homes, and we want to be able to ensure that people can stay in their homes if they've been living there and if they have family ties and all the rest of it there's a balance to be got there. We'll never get it right all the time. There will always be examples of where we probably think that is unfair, but because of the way the rules are written. So will we keep it under review? Yes, absolutely. But we do need that balance, because you raised this issue with me this week. Next time I'm here, you could say about the lack of accommodation for people with X, Y and Z condition, and the adaptations that they need as well. So it's a balance. We'll keep it under review.
Thank you. Mark.
Thanks, Chair. Shane beat me to it. I was going to ask on the right to buy. So I still will, only maybe a more pointed question. Obviously, it's important that research is carried out. A lot of research has been carried out and was in advance of the previous minister doing away with the right to buy for housing association. But would the minister, and I know his political leaning is in support of right to buy, but given the dire situation we have, where targets that I believe aren't ambitious enough, I'm sure you agree, in the first place, but we're getting nowhere near meeting them, and you're selling off maybe a quarter of what you're managing to build in terms of social housing stock per year, would you even consider a moratorium on the right to buy until we can ramp up the social housing development programme?
Where I'm at right now, again, I will look at the options. I'll look at the evidence that comes before you. But to be frank, Mark, my focus is on finding innovative solutions to build more social homes. But again, I will look at what comes. We can have those discussions on that. I'm happy to chat to you about this again, no doubt.
Yeah, well, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, you can focus on building more homes and, just stop selling off the ones that we have. And I think as part of the research, an important part of that would be to look at how many former social homes that have been sold are now in the private rental market, and where rent is being paid by housing benefit.
Thank you. Okay, members, we're moving then to any other items that didn't fall within those, and I appreciate members for sticking to the agreement in relation to that. I'm coming first of all to Maurice Bradley. Maurice, you had indicated you wanted to ask a question there in this section, so go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's around benefit fraud, and I would just like to ask the Minister, given the figures that were recently suggested from 2023, that fraud and error cost almost £250 million. That's a significant burden in the public purse, especially in times of austerity, which we are in. Can the Minister give us an update on the Department's efforts to tackle this issue and recover losses of fraudulent claims?
Maurice, can I just, before you start, can I ask, so we literally only have, in order to let you away on time, Minister, we only have about 12 minutes, so potentially this may be an update by way of writing, if you want to give brief headlines and further detail, just to allow members in. Thank you.
240 million in 2023. That has got a lot worse since then. We can provide you with the exact figure, but we need to do something about it. I know there's been a reticence from some around this chamber to talk about this issue, but we have £10 billion that's paid out every single year in benefits, and the fraud figures aren't as low as they should be. So I think we need to do something about that, Maurice, and I've put a paper to the executive. Unfortunately, it hasn't got onto the agenda. I hope that I know the Deputy First Minister is in favour. I hope the First Minister would get on board with that, because I often come to you and say how much I need more money, but this is something actually we can do to raise revenue. We're trying to get an agreement with the government to allow us to keep some of the savings that come from the money that we invest by tackling welfare fraud, and we can get tens of millions of pounds back every single year by putting a little bit extra in. For every £1 we spend, we get £8 back. If we can split that between ourselves and the Treasury, which Treasury are open to, that'll be good news for everybody all round. It's only bad news for those that are fiddling the system, and we're not talking a few £100 or a few £1,000 every year. These are tens of thousands of pounds. So that's an issue that I want to see dealt with, Mr. Chairman, and I hope we could have the support of the committee on that.
Thank you, Minister. Going to our Deputy Chair, Nicola Brogan. Go ahead, Nicola.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, Minister, I want to ask just about the serious financial concerns that the community involved. community and voluntary sector are facing at the minute. I know that there was a motion debated in the Assembly this week about the replacement of the Shared Prosperity Fund, that new local growth fund, and Minister Dowd has been liaising with the British Treasury on that. And very sadly, we saw the doors of parenting focus close after 46 years in recent weeks. And I suppose, Nick, fair warning that we're going to see the closure of more services like that there if funding isn't increased. So as I say, I know Minister Dowd has been liaising with the British Treasury in this. What are you doing as Minister for Communities to help the sector?
Look, I share those concerns. You'll be aware of the rules that apply, that it is the Department of Finance that lead on these issues directly with the Treasury, but I'm fully in support of that. I've made my views known to that sector. I've made my views known to the executive as well, and I think we need to be united as an executive on this, because critical work is being done and there will be serious consequences if that work can continue. So I think it's something we're all united on.
Just one final question, Minister. Oireachtas na Sauna is taking place in Belfast next week. That's for the first time in 30 years. It's actually going to be held in Belfast.
So what is it?
Oireachtas na Sauna. So it's like a celebration based around Halloween, that there, but of the Irish language and arts and culture and all that type of thing. You have received an invite to it. It's running from, I think, next Wednesday over the Halloween weekend. Are you planning to attend?
I would have no issue attending, but I'm not in the country actually next week for personal reasons. So I don't know about it. I hope everyone has a good time, but I'm not going to be around for that.
Okay. Well, can you and your department help to promote the event as well?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean.
Quick one on an issue that has been brought up to the committee on a couple of different occasions, and questions have been asked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with me that a band who is found to be linked either by the use of a display of symbols or flags or their attendance at specific events of a prescribed organisation would be in breach of a code of conduct in terms of good relations?
So I know I'm aware of some of the media coverage today, so let me be unequivocally clear. I have no time whatsoever for paramilitary activity, for the glorification of terrorism, and for anything that promotes or defends what took place. And I'm crystal clear on that. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it's Republican, don't care if it's Loyalist, wherever it comes from, I'm against it. I've had a consistent position on that. That's something that I will maintain as well. So I set the policy direction in terms of the department and the ALBs. The Arts Council have the responsibility. I have said, as part of the policy, and I'll continue to say, good relations is part of that. Mm-hmm. It is really important that good relations criteria is met and maintained, and it will be up to the Arts Council to take that out. Now, I know you probably want me to get involved in individual matters and all the rest of it, but so my position, my policy position is clear. That stuff shouldn't happen. It's inappropriate and wrong if it does happen, and there shouldn't be those links. There shouldn't be commemoration of any sort, and then it'll be for the Arts Council to determine that. I've given a very clear direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I want to ask one just before I come to Mark, and I hope to get to Mark in time. So this is a general one on behalf of the committee. We have drawn up a list of a number of things that we're asking the department to come back to us on around announcements of public funds for various items. Minister, Section 1.5 of the Ministerial Code of Conduct, from items 1 to item 5, I don't have time to go through them, but these 4 clauses together establish a statutory duty of openness, accountability and proper stewardship of public money. They create, in essence, the basis for committee scrutiny, and a minister who fails to provide information to the committee or allocates funding without transparency risks breaching this. In light of the information we've requested, Minister, what are your thoughts on that? And do you recognise that this committee has a right to scrutinise allocations of public funding?
Absolutely. I think you need to look at Section 29 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, which gives the basis for which this committee operates, refers back to the Belfast
I have done that, Minister, and I'm bringing out this section
of the Northern Ireland Assembly. So I am more than open to scrutiny, and in fact, Mr. Chairman, I probably think more than any Minister, I have made myself available to the committee, and
in particular in the chamber. I bring oral statements, I think, on nearly every initiative that I'm doing. I give you the opportunities to ask me questions. I have never knowingly withheld any information from the committee. I don't think in any way I've refused to give you information other than what is there. So I'm not quite sure. Tell me what you're getting at, because I'm not quite sure
what I'm saying is very clear. Oral statements in the chamber do not equate to committee scrutiny. They don't equate to committee having a view of these things before they're announced, or any input in terms of our advisory role, which you mentioned. However, in the interest of time, will you commit to looking at the issues we have sent you to ask to be looked at in detail?
I'm still not sure what you're saying. Are you saying that we should have some kind of role in which you sign off on decisions before I make them? No.
Did I mention sign off?
No, because I'm not quite sure, because I'm saying we give
scrutiny,
you the
Minister, is the word. The word I've mentioned is scrutiny.
Mr. Chairman.
The word I mentioned is
scrutiny.
scrutiny.
What do you want? Help me to help you.
We have written to you in detail with what you
Okay.
want. I'm asking you to respond to that letter.
Right,
in detail.
I can respond to a letter, but I will go back against any accusation that I'm not being open or transparent in the decisions that I have taken. Every decision I've made lines up with managing public money and the requirements of the Ministerial Code.
Okay, thank you, Minister. And Mark Durkin, very briefly. Mark, please.
Thanks, Chair. We've a paper in correspondence, Minister. It's on the review of the rate support grant, and that's more on the formula and how the pie is cut. But the size of that pie has reduced massively. It's reduced from 2018-19, when it was over 17 million, to last year when it was just over £3 million. Obviously, this is impacting very negatively on less well-off councils. I wonder, have you made any representation to the Finance Minister, to the Executive, in terms of getting more money for this particular pot, given, I suppose, the Executive's pledges around regional balance?
Yeah. If I were to do that, I can tell you exactly what the Finance Minister would say, which is it's up to you to determine your own budget. So, look, I've worked within my own budget. I know that it has been difficult for councils, but in my first year, whenever I came in, one of the first meetings I had was, here's how we're £155 million short, and savings will need to be made. I'm in a position now where I am able to live within budget, but ultimately I have to focus first of all on my statutory duties, and the rate support grant, as I understand it, doesn't require me to fund that to a certain level. I believe what is being funded is being divided up fairly, but I wasn't able to maintain that as to where it would have been 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay.
No, I hadn't lost that argument with the previous Finance Minister, Simon Hamilton. It was at the time, but I do believe there is an argument to make where really your department is a post box for this money from Department of Finance to the councils. I mean, there is a statutory protection for the de-rating grant that all councils avail of. So I'll maybe pick that up with you again, Minister.
Thank you. Okay, Minister, I want to thank you for appearing today and thank all of your top team. Emer, given the heavy, I've observed before the heavy workload, I feel you've been under the spotlight quite a bit today.
And we didn't even hear from Paddy Rooney for the last meeting.
This could be my last time here, yeah, exactly.
And Paddy, I want to wish you all well in light of it being your pastime, and thank you for all the support and assistance you have given the committee, including some of those informal sessions were very, very useful.
Thank you.
So,
thank you for your support.
Yep, thank you. Minister, thank you. Okay, members, thank you. So I'm going to pick up then on any actions suggested or raising out of that meeting. One was proposed by the Deputy Chair around legal advice in relation to the Irish language strategy, was it? Or was the
fund? Was it about the
it was the football fund.
It was the football, yeah, okay.
Where the actual legal action is kind of
yeah,
thing,
so given that a date hasn't been set yet, whether or not there is, that does. Would members be content with seeking legal advice? Clerk, any issue with that?
Yep, no, I'm happy to seek legal advice.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else members wish to pick up on then, coming out of that session?
Can we follow up on the conversations around the priority need for refugees, whether that has changed or will be changing, please?
Members are content?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that to the Housing Executive or to the Department?
The Department. We could also ask the Housing Executive, but it'll be the Department that I think that will set that policy.
whether the priority need policy is being amended or updated.
Yeah. And the Minister gave some verbal indications or some response to a letter that we have written there. Can I ask that that is followed up in terms of getting that information in writing, and the more extensive and full information on that?
The TNF letter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Chair, can we also maybe...
No, sorry, members agreed.
So we have literally just issued a follow-up letter requesting the list of items requested at the September meeting on the basis of the legal advice received last week, which was in closed session. Committee took an agreement last week to write again to the department citing the powers of the 2021 Act and asking for that information. So that has just issued. Is this on top of that?
No, that's in response to that. Just
Okay.
that we want the full response. The Minister touched on some of those issues. I just want to make it clear that that's not we still need the written response,
Okay.
the full written response.
Okay, to the questions.
Yeah.
I think the Minister said when I was asking about his engagement with the co-design group on the Irish language strategy in particular, that they had cancelled the meeting on him. Am I right in saying that?
Because of a JR?
Yeah,
Did say
which is, maybe we could follow up with that there with both the co-design group and the Minister or the department, see exactly where things lie with that there, because last week they were quite clear that they felt they hadn't been engaged with sufficiently, so maybe we just for a bit more clarity on that there.
Why was the meeting cancelled?
And
the basis for which the meeting was cancelled?
and can we encourage more engagement kind of thing with the co-design group, because obviously they've put 4 years work into the strategy and want to see that being used.
Members agreed with that, okay. The Minister, the Minister and Emer Morelli both indicated around this 6 to 7 month timeline around the cross-departmental working group. That was we were first told that was put in place in January. The Minister clarified the executive approval came in May. 6 or 7 months from May, and by my counting is November, December, but Emer referred to the financial year. So I'm just extremely concerned about the woolliness of a lot of the timelines, and Andy touched on timelines as well and got very little. But would members agree that we write and ask for timelines again on these issues, and for an explanation as to why, if it was 6 or 7 months, why that will not be within this calendar year, which would, I think, 6 or 7 months would cover. Members content with that? Clerk, you can help.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, members? And thank you, members, for moving through that session. We did cover a lot of ground. Appreciate your cooperation.
So I just make the point that whenever we ask about timelines, you could end up getting the same waffly answer that I was actually getting there whenever I raised the issue about strategies coming to the fore. So that I think it needs to be a wee bit more concrete than that, and in terms of what's actually been said there, that even when we chat then about the timelines about publication, when's that going to happen?
So a forecast date for the strategy to go to the executive, to the committee, and to consultation.
Yeah.
Does that cover everything?
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah. Okay, members content then with that. Thank you. So members, we need to allow some time for interpreters to set up for live broadcasting in advance of the next session. So I therefore propose that we take a suspension of 5 minutes before we move to the next evidence session. So if members could come back in about 5 minutes there, please. Thank you.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
There's sign language options in there. Live.
Okay, members, thank you. We are back into live session and moving on to agenda item 6, which is a departmental briefing on the Sign Language Bill. Members, the briefing paper for this agenda item are at page 18, and I now would like to welcome the following officials to the meeting. So we're joined by Iain Greenway, Sign Language Policy and Legislation Branch, Tommy McAuley, Sign Language Policy and Legislation Branch, and Gerard Flynn, Sign Language Policy and Legislation Branch. So, Iain, I think it's yourself who's going to maybe make a brief opening statement, and then we'll get to questions from members. Thank you, Iain. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. You've introduced ourselves, so I can skip my first paragraph there. And we are grateful for the opportunity to provide further briefing on the Sign Language Bill. The Department is aware the deaf community is waiting with great patience for the delivery of this legislation, which recognises both British Sign Language and Irish Sign Language as languages of Northern Ireland. It also places a duty on the Department to promote the further development of deaf culture and guarantees accessibility to the public information and services of the prescribed organisations. The committee had requested information and documents arising from its 25th of September meeting. The Department provided updates on the status of each request in our written briefing, and we are happy, of course, to provide further updates during the session this morning. I hope you found the Department's written material useful in your deliberations, and we are happy to clarify any of the information provided or any other issues the committee may wish to raise to examine under the bill. Within the written briefing, the Department has highlighted that alongside the bill itself, statutory guidance and regulations, along with the Sign Language Action Plans, nicely called SLAPs, which prescribed organisations will develop, will add detail on how those organisations will meet their statutory duties under the bill. In addition, the current refresh of the Sign Language Framework and Strategy will provide further detail on how we will develop the infrastructure of support and an outline in greater detail of how the policy intent of the bill will be realised over the lifespan of that framework. This will all build on the contents of the 2016 framework. We are cognizant of the fact that that 2016 framework was not approved during the suspension of the Assembly, but much has been delivered by the Department and others to contribute to or realise the 9 objectives of that draft. That work has helped to realise the statutory duties to greater accessibility as committed to now within the bill. For example, we frequently refer to access to services beginning with access to information. A key to this is an adequate supply of interpreters, which is an objective of the draft framework. Within the past couple of months, the Department's funding for Foyle Deaf Association has realised the qualification and registration of 4 BSL interpreters and 1 trainee BSL interpreter, and 3 ISL interpreters and 1 trainee ISL interpreter. The Department's funding of Foyle Deaf Association premises in Derry, Londonderry, one of the 2 deaf hubs along with Belfast envisaged in Objective 4 of the framework, has allowed it to focus on its core mission as a deaf-led training centre and to develop the delivery of an interpreter training programme. Linked to this objective, and the objective to develop the Northern Ireland Sign Language academic and research base within our universities, students have commenced the second year of a 2-year MA in Sign Language Interpreting and Translation at Queen's University Belfast. The unique student cohort blend of deaf and hearing, BSL and ISL, and existing registered interpreters will not only further increase interpreter capacity, but will also add to the development of our academic base. This in addition to a DFC-funded postdoctorate position and the co-funding from the Ulster Society for 3 PhDs. The department currently invests up to £250,000 annually in its family signing programme, an objective of the draft framework. An independent review of this programme is currently being taken forward by Professor Byrne from Queen's University. We've rehearsed in previous briefings how the department and others swung into action during the early days of the COVID pandemic as well, to ensure briefing and engagement and accessibility to the deaf community for all of the public health messages. The best route for providing interpreting services fully to meet post-bill requirements are currently being assessed, building on all of that progress to date. The refreshed strategy will set out information on how the Act's requirements and duties will be realised, including the infrastructure of support necessary to deliver on the intent of the legislation. Objectives in the framework will be framed as outcomes reflecting the greater certainty the legislation will bring. The department is currently taking forward a co-design exercise with representatives of the deaf community through the Sign Language Partnership Group. Executive departments are also represented on that group. This will identify priority areas to inform the final outcomes of the refreshed framework. To this end, an initial focus group has been held with the deaf community in Belfast ahead of a series of events across Northern Ireland in the run-up to Christmas. To date, priority areas consideration as framework outcomes include those 2016 objectives I referred to earlier, and the following additional themes are emerging: support for deaf-blind people, support for deaf children in educational settings, support for children of deaf adults, coders, the development of a Belfast Deaf Hub, access to services, and the promotion of BSL, ISL and deaf culture. I appreciate the committee has much to consider, and I will therefore now draw my opening remarks to a conclusion to allow us to cover as much ground as the committee wishes to this morning.
Thank you, Iain. That's very useful. A couple from myself first before I go to members then. So in general terms, given the evidence and discussion that the committee have had, and I'm sure that you've been following, what potential amendments, if any, are the department at this stage considering? And we're thinking around at least one person or group appearing to the department to be acting on behalf of has come up extensively. The initial reporting period has come up, followed, so we have interim reporting along with the 5-year report. So what, given the evidence you've seen through this committee, what potential amendments are you considering now?
I'll start on this and then pass to Tommy, but the one person, yes, we are looking at what may be amended in that regard, always with an intention to consult widely. So what's the right wording in the bill, in the Act, is something we're engaging with Legislative Council on. I should preface this and keep prefacing this with, we need to go back to Minister, who will need to go to the Executive if they are to be Executive amendments. We have also been looking at the children are persons under 19 years of age, and that's at the very end of Clause 2. There can be much debate backwards and forwards. There are different definitions of children with different disabilities, etc., etc. We are looking in a pragmatic sense to try and tie to a definition already in legislation rather than come up with something different there. So that, again, I would see as a reasonably technical amendment, if you like, to realise the intent. I know we have been looking at when the first review should be done and whether we keep a backstop date in legislation or prescribe a full-stop date as well. And I think we found one very technical point in Clause 7 that may need some work, but it probably sits better in the clause-by-clause, line-by-line scrutiny. It is very detailed. Is there anything I have overlooked in that, Tommy?
I think those major points have been covered. Yeah, I mean, the Clause 2 that Iain had referred to, the 19-year-old, we're aware of some of, as Iain had mentioned, our family sign language programme is currently undergoing a review from Professor Byrne in Queen's, so that whole programme will be reported on at that stage. But we're listening to our partners in the Sign Language Partnership Group who deliver that programme and who have referenced that their preference to raise the age from 19 to 21 to reflect the Northern Ireland Children and Young Persons Strategy for disabled children, access and services.
Yeah, and also I would ask you to look at there are a lot of strategies and a lot of regulations around 25 children and care, looked after children and that, and I think there's maybe merit in taking that. So I'll point you toward that direction.
We are awaiting some input from the NDCS on that because they had flagged that up. So we have asked them to come back to us with a rationale for 21/25.
Okay. Thank you. The last one for me for now, in any case, because I'm keen to get to members, is around Clause 4. You mentioned in the briefing that the Department of Education is considering the implications of the duties outlined in the draft bill on all schools, should they be included as prescribed bodies. And you yourself have mentioned, and it has been repeatedly mentioned here, around the potential for schools and the need for schools, the need for children not to feel isolated in schools, to have the support, the potential of schools to really be a game changer here in relation to awareness and all of that. So my question would be, their framing is should they not be prescribed, but the Education Authority being prescribed organisation, does that not indicate that the Department for Education should absolutely be a prescribed organisation? And is it possible schools might not need, if they're not prescribed, that they may not need to follow guidance, and they're so critical to it all? So can you outline the implications if they're not included in the list? And would schools therefore not be required to provide interpreters and other support for deaf children?
I'm going to come to Gerard in a moment because he's sitting forward expectingly. I can see out of the corner of my eye. All Northern Ireland departments will be prescribed. That's on the face of the bill, so that will occur. The Education Authority, absolutely. I can't speak for, there is a process and negative resolution, but the Education Authority is a very significant public body delivering public services. I would be amazed if it were not to be prescribed. But Gerard, when we reach out further than that.
Yes, all departments will be prescribed. The education authorities, Catholic maintained schools, we're looking to prescribe those as well. And it's difficult when we speak in relation to education. If I could frame it more on a DFC perspective and use Northern Ireland Libraries as an example. Well, Northern Ireland Libraries, through the guidance, will have to produce a SLAP, Sign Language Action Plan. That SLAP will be applicable in every single library in Northern Ireland. So the same analogy comes from your government body. So that is where we're coming from the DSV. So our perspective with every library will be caught because Northern Ireland Libraries are caught. So therefore the responsibilities of Catholic maintained schools and Education Authority would be for the schools that fall under their remit. But as I say, I can't specifically speak on behalf of education. The intention is to list all public bodies, and all public bodies would be all the arm's length bodies and local councils as well. We would need to capture all the public bodies that are offering services to the deaf community out here, and that's the intention of this bill and this clause.
Okay, thank you. I will go to Sean then.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in today. So there's a couple of things that I have. So clause 3 2b, it is nothing in this section implies that prescribed organisations are prevented from taking into account matters of affordability to them, as well as taking into account wider factors influencing them. For me, as I read this puts affordability above inclusivity, and I'm just wondering, is there parameters that the department has already had in mind when this was included in the bill?
Yes, and you're right, Sean, that 3.2 has, on the one hand, on the other hand, if you like, almost there is a commitment that access will be at no extra cost, and that is hard and fast at the end of 3.2a, and I think that's really, really important. So if there is a cost to this, and there will be a cost to this, that is covered by the public purse, however the mechanics of that work. But we have to recognise that money is tight. You hear it every week from officials, you hear it every week in the chamber. The more we set down and say this has to be done, that has to be done, in practical terms that simply means something else in the department will not be done, because money will only go so far. So the more things we cover hard and fast without any caveats in any legislation means there is less money for other things that are not enshrined as a statutory duty. So what we are trying to do here is recognise there will be a tension here, let's be honest about it. There will be a tension. Some requests for access will be more expensive than others, will be more complex than others. We are trying to work through, and then the best practice guidance underneath this will help public bodies to act in a coherent, consistent way that is aligned with the intent of the legislation.
Okay.
Anything you want to add to that, Tommy?
Yeah, I would say that, the headline part of Clause 3 is that information and services must be available to BSL ISL users without any additional cost. The Section 2B is a matter of balance. When bodies are determining the bounds of reasonable steps, matters of affordability and practicability can't be never issues. We have an issue with capacity of interpreters, which Iain has outlined in his opening remarks we're trying to address, and building the capacity of interpreters. For practicable reasons, someone could request an interpreter and there aren't enough to have it. At the moment, there's generally a lead-in time for even ourselves of 2 to 3 weeks to book an interpreter. So that's an example of a practical issue. The affordability issue can be very niche. We will provide statutory guidance, but if someone wants something that is deemed unreasonable or goes back too far for a translation, for example, then matters of affordability should be considered there. The priority has to be given to immediate interpretation.
Do you understand why some people within the community would read that clause? Because that came out in, I think, every consultation that I had heard in terms of the people that attended. There is a friction there, and there will be a friction there in terms of, well, you can just underwrite all of this by saying the affordability deems it inapplicable.
But there's the issue that all public bodies must be reasonable at all times, and the test of reasonableness is, are they meeting their obligations under this legislation? Are they complying with the statutory guidance? Most likely will say in 2025 you must provide an interpreter for key appointments. And the feedback we've been getting is that there's an understanding that things won't change overnight. There will be that issue of supply and demand with interpreters for appointments, meetings, translations in particular. Translations would be more costly than interpreters, and I think public bodies have to have some sort of recourse to assessing, on balance, is it a reasonable request? Even within the legislation, you have under definition of the deaf community, CODIS, children of deaf adults, who would have a good command of English. Is it reasonable and affordable to provide an interpreter upon request? It may not happen, but just trying to outline what-if scenarios we have to future-proof.
And will there be criteria in that statutory guidance in terms of what would be deemed appropriate?
I think that's the point of this. Because although the legislation mentions affordable, the guidance will set out how you approach these. So the guidance won't be starting off with it's unaffordable, don't do it. It'll be the opposite of that. So your last course of action would be fine, something unaffordable. What we're looking here in the guidance is getting access to services for deaf communities. So the best way we can achieve those access to services is what we're looking to achieve through the guidance. Now, because of practical elements and interpreters and other reasons, we may not always be able to achieve those ends. But the guidance starts off from the premise that we're looking to get access to service for the deaf community, rather than the guidance looking for reasons not to prevent that access to service.
The other one.
Sorry, and just to add to that, Sian, if I may, that guidance is being co-designed. It's being developed in co-design. Actually, the pen at this stage is being held by the British Deaf Association rather than the department. So that is very much trying to work through what are the issues that will arise, can be foreseen to arise in daily life for a health trust or a GP or a school, whatever the prescribed organisations may be, and the person in the deaf community. So the more we can foresee and embed in that guidance, the better. And the co-design process is proving a very rich seam from which to mine that.
The other point I had...
Just before you move on, so we follow up that, John. So when are we going to see the guidance, and will that be before we conclude our considerations? Because we don't want to be in a situation where we're buying a pig and a poke around the guidance, that you're providing some reassurance, but we'd like to see those in relation to.
Yes.
So when are we going to actually have sight of?
In your written briefing, it talks about 4 to 6 weeks' time from today. So what's that, the end of November? 4 to 6 weeks from now. So that I'm trying to find paragraph there, but it best practice guidance. We expect to be within the next 4 to 6 weeks, paragraph 10 of the written briefing.
The best practice is being circulated around the Sign Language Partnership Group for them to consider, add, revise, add to it. And when you consider that that is a forum of departments, yes, but also representatives of the deaf community, we expect it to be quite robust.
Okay, sorry, Sean, I interrupted you there.
You're okay. So the other thing I had was just clause 4.4 that define public character. What does that mean?
Gerard. Right, yes, I know this has caused concern. The purpose of 4.4 is to capture those public bodies that aren't being captured under clause 4.1, basically, that carry out some functions and not set up as an ALB or other ones. At the minute, there's no obvious ones to us. We're still looking at those, but they're not the priority. They're basically that is to catch something that we've missed, who's serving as a public body, rather than throwing a net out to catch everybody. It's looking at here's an area that we've missed. It's providing a public service and they're carrying out the functions. Then, and in those situations, we'll go on to list those. So we haven't identified any at the minute, but they're future-proof to bring in any areas that have been missed in relation to services to the deaf community.
So one that has been identified in evidence to this committee is care homes. Is a very classic case in point.
It's something we'd have to take on board.
It is a very public sector.
We would have to take legal advice in respect to where they would sit into the functions of public, but it's certainly something we would consider. But again, the care homes, it depends what department they fall under as well, and how they fall into their slot and in that process. So who's responsible for the care homes? I don't know off the top of my head. But if I go back to the Northern Ireland Libraries example, Libraries NI are responsible for each library, and from there they will bring their sign language plans straight through to the street level of the libraries.
And Tommy and Gerard were with First Legislative Council, and this was one of the things they talked about yesterday, Tommy.
And really, for the purposes of this, an organisation has to be wholly in. We can't list part of an organisation that has a public function. Previously, we've had questions from the committee about, for example, we've discussed some healthcare provisions, elective surgery in private institutions like Kingsbridge or Bupa. They are clearly not providing a public function for 100% of what they do. Now, if the nursing home is providing solely, if it's solely publicly funded, that's an area we would have to consider. If it's a blend, you're putting a regulatory impact on a private institution, which is not the intent of this legislation.
However, they're a private institution operating in what is a statutory requirement service in terms of delivering that care. You can see how communication and issues like this would be very important. So this is where I think we need to ensure that feeds through.
That's a really helpful example, Chair, because some of that care is funded publicly, some of that is funded privately. It's a really good example, and it's self-evident that there will be more than the average number of people who will need help with signing and so on. So we will absolutely take that away. One example that had been mentioned in earlier discussions was in Scotland there's a prison that's run by a private company. And that activity is of a public character. I'm not saying we're going to have a... Pam's looking worriedly at me. I'm not saying we're going to have a private prison here tomorrow, but that would be an example of something that would drive straight in there. Care homes, you've raised a clearly complex area. We will take that away and be ready by the time you come to the line by line with that point.
To me, all of those services mentioned should be provided by the state, to be quite honest with you, and therefore such is their importance that I don't think there should be a technical or a technicality way for them if they're operating in that privileged kind of area, delivering those services. Okay, they're profiting from it, and that's one matter. There's a very key requirement on us to ensure that people get the services in those key. These aren't services people can do without.
We will take that point away before and be ready for the line by line, probably to allow committee to cover everything it wishes this morning. Perhaps that's one we'll take away. If committee thinks of any other examples, please share them with us.
Okay, Sean, you're okay at
that? No, it's good.
I'm coming to Morris then on Zoom. Morris, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Really, it's not really a question, but some matters of clarification. And it surrounds the lack of analysis for cost and a funding plan. I wonder if the department could bring back some sort of interim data or preliminary estimates. I'm also unclear about the list of public bodies for coverage. Could the department bring us back a draft list for review? And the absence of teacher accreditations a worry. Is there a clear timeline and options available that maybe they could bring back to the committee to discuss? And finally, the co-design one, there are potential gaps in representation. Could they bring back detail on the membership of the sign language group and who was consulted? Just a list of stuff that we would need to know before we can make an informed decision.
Very happy to provide. The line isn't brilliant here, but I'm sure the clerk will write down those specific questions. I think we have provided membership of the Sign Language Partnership Group previously, and all of this co-design is being involved, as I mentioned in opening remarks. There are public engagement forums as well. It isn't simply a closed room of the group or committee. The team here and with others like the British Deaf Association have extremely good reach out into the sector and are doing all they can to use that reach, because it's not in our interest as a department not to get this right as we possibly can. Sorry, we'll accept we're all human. If I go back to the start of Maurice's list, and please keep me right, Maurice, I think the first was about the costs of the translation services, the signing services. Is that correct?
Yeah, some guideline doesn't actually going to cost down the line. There's no initial cost at the minute, but there will be a cost down the line for a whole plethora of stuff.
And I want to preface this by saying that under the clause, when I was talking with Sean at 3.2a, that cost will be borne by the public purse. Of course, the public purse is not bottomless. It will have to fight its corner with everything else in that process. What we do know at the moment is that the health system, now run within the Department of Health, because it was in the Health and Social Care Board that was brought back into the Department of Health, that is of the order of £1 million a year, the cost of the services that provides.
In excess of £1 million per year. That's for online, face-to-face, note-taking, lip speaking.
And we know that the central government service, procured through construction and procurement delivery, as a lot within the overall interpreting services, is around about £500,000 in the year in the last 12 months. So we know, as a starting point, around about £1.5 to £2 million. We also know that not all needs are being brought forward, and this bill will surface additional needs, because this is about recognising the shortcomings that exist in the system. So we have, as a rule of thumb, and I apologise that we're not able to be more scientific than this, Maurice, we have doubled the current number as a sense of a scale of what we might be working with. And to achieve that, we need the public funding to fund the contracts that will need to be in place to do this. And we need the interpreters, because there's no good having contracts if there are not enough interpreters to go around. Hence, the number of students going through Queen's, going through the Full Deaf Association, etc. Because we cannot magic these people up, and it takes time for them to come up to standard and be available. So we have been working strongly on the capacity. We have, as a rule of thumb, been saying we're looking at around doubling. Can't guarantee that, and I would defy anybody really with any degree of certainty in detail to say what this number will look like. And we know there are certain things that will be needed almost in real time in A&E or wherever it may be. Other things may be able to be flexed a little bit in time. It may not need to be in the moment. So we will have to work with those things, and our contractors and our signers will have to work with those things that sometimes, let's be honest, if there's an urgent need in A&E and the signer has to go there rather than dealing with something that is less in the minute, that's life in it for the deaf or the non-deaf. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance, Maurice, A, that we have been thinking about these numbers, and B, we are thinking how these pipes are constructed. We are thinking, does the health system contract expand to cover all prescribed bodies? Do we continue with the central government contract and the health contract? How do we get best practice moving between those? they're all going to be drawing on the same pool of interpreters. So my instinct is we have a single contract, because that actually helps balance where the power sits in the system. But we need to look at what is most practical.
Okay, thank you. I actually just wanted to pick up a new point you'd mentioned. Sorry, Morris, go ahead there, Morris, again.
I think it's important because as a scrutiny committee, we need to have all the information before we can go forward, and it's vital to get this right. It's vital to get it right.
Thank you. I fully agree, Morris. And there may be a number of questions, including those questions, Morris, and a few that we don't get to today that we'll put into you.
What I would say, though, Chair, is this is primary legislation. This is enabling, as all primary legislation is. There will be much scrutiny around statutory rules and best practice statutory guidance that come underneath this, and indeed what the costs will be as budget scrutiny goes on. To think that everything is going to be dealt with in detail and in a spreadsheet at the primary legislation stage is not how the structure of the two-tier legislation.
We all know how the structure works here. I think we're all aware of that. But anyway, our duty is to make it as good as possible at this stage. That's our duty as a committee, so that's what we're trying to do.
Morris did have some other sort of main strands. I don't know.
Yeah, Morris asked about the timeline for accreditation, which is clause 10.
Yep,
go ahead. Pick up on that one. Yep. There's two parts of this: the accreditation of teachers, and for clarity, that means teachers of British Sign Language and Irish Sign Language, not teaching in mainstream education, and the accreditation of interpreters. The accreditation of interpreters will be pretty straightforward. We're not seeking to collect fees to set up a new body. In all probability, the regulations will say that you must be a member of one of the following registration bodies, like the NRCPD, the Scottish listing, the Irish Sign Language Service, to work in a public forum, and that's to safeguard the quality of interpreters and to ensure continuous professional development, etc. The teachers, tutors is a more complicated issue. There is no equivalent body currently for teachers. We have been speaking with, we provided a grant for local tutors to set up their own charity with the view to considering if they can deliver something similar to NRCPD. So with regards to interpreters, that should be turned around pretty quickly. With regards to teachers, we just can't say at the moment until there's an equivalent body, but there's no intent on the department to collect fees. However, it is in the primary to future-proof in case something can't be done with the teaching body.
Are you confident, and thank you for that, because that does address what was going to be another question of mine. Tommy, are you content that those bodies will all cover well enough any potential dialect issues which has been raised with us?
Yeah, I mean currently the health and social care contract, taking it way back to COVID, one of the issues was the deaf community launched a campaign. They wanted local interpreters. We worked with the health board, set up a first contract. It wasn't widely well received by interpreters, so we moved to another provider, and they set up a hunt group, if we can call it that, of Northern Ireland BSL, ISL interpreters to meet that need. The cohort of interpreters working in Northern Ireland currently, face-to-face, etc., the likes of Christina, Amanda, will either be based in Northern Ireland or, and generally speaking, for ISL up until now, we've relied on interpreters coming up from the south. So that's why we've invested in capacity building, which means that for the first time we have more, probably the biggest cohort of Northern Ireland based ISL interpreters. So all of these interpreters would have been taught within the Northern Ireland framework, and therefore Northern Ireland dialects would be embedded in that. Their language models as part of their training programme would be the Northern Ireland deaf community. But even for those interpreters, and most of our interpreters now would have either had to travel to GB or to the south for ISL, there is a tolerance threshold for influence from dialects that's built into that. So the only occasions really you would get BSL interpreters coming to Northern Ireland, I would suggest, would be for conferences where capacity is an issue, or international conferences.
Thank you. And just before we go to Pam, I want to pick up on one wee issue that was mentioned earlier around people who have reasonably good English. Just to say, and I know we won't get to a perfect situation immediately, but just to say the point has been made strongly in committee that often that is a second language. Albeit how good it might be, it's a second language and people want to communicate with us, like all of us do, in our first language. So I just want to make that...
Just on that, that's why in clause 3 it refers to convenient, because you'll be aware of Ellie May, who who was very articulate and vocalised her issues, had a cochlear implant, but is more comfortable after a while signing. And we have many deaf people in Northern Ireland who are like that. Without an interpreter, they can communicate with us orally, but they would prefer to sign.
I think that's important that we get to that stage. Thanks. Pam, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your attendance here at committee today. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm just so glad to see this piece of work being done. It's so long overdue, and such a great need out there. It's not a specific question to the bill, or it may be. I'm not fully over the detail yet, not completely up to speed yet on it, but I'm just wondering what attention has been given to geographical areas with higher concentration of deaf community, and how has that impacted on the drafting of the bill, or has it? I mean, clearly we want these provisions, want the best piece of legislation we could possibly have. We want provision to be as far wide-reaching as physically possible, but clearly there are areas that may well have higher concentration of deaf community. So has that come into play at all in the drafting?
Certainly we are anxious to make sure that deaf people, wherever they are, get the service they need, subject to all of the pieces in the bill and everything else. And that rural proofing, inequality, impact assessment and all of that will have fed into those processes. Where the interpreters live, etc., there will be the practical points. More and more, much of this can be done and is being done online with a pop-up on the screen and everything, so geography becomes a little less intensive, but there will certainly be occasions when you need all to be in the same physical space to get it absolutely right. Do we have anything in particular?
Yes, I mean, that is, I suppose, with the best will in the world, we can invest in building capacity of the interpreters. We can't necessarily direct where they're going to live and where they will work, because they're largely freelance. If they're under contract for example, the health and social care contract, and they work for them, then there's maybe more direction that can happen there. And you look back at the Scottish legislation, and they had a similar issue with the islands. And one of their landscape reviews, I think it was Edinburgh University, maybe they carried that out. They looked at trying to incentivise interpreters to travel to the islands because they were aware there was a gap there. Now, what we know from working with Foil Deaf Association in the Northwest and Hands of Talk is they cover a large area that would expand into the southwest, Fermanagh, parts of Tyrone, because of gaps there. So it is something we're going to have to look at. We have been considering what we can do, but the issue we have is that you're working with the freelance cohort and we can't direct them to travel.
And I suspect, like that, I suspect the solution is just to have as many as possible interpreters out of this process, because clearly there's huge burnout. It's very labour intensive.
We have 9 come on top that Iain had referred to from Foil Deaf Association. There are 12 or 13 unregistered students, deaf, hearing, BSL, ISL, going through the MA at Queen's, who hopefully, should things go well with their studies, be registered at the end of that, and then we go again. But the department is, even though it's a cross-cutting issue, the department is taking the lead on trying to develop our capacity of interpreters.
And in terms of accreditation, I know anecdotally there have been issues in the past. People have gone and done courses and moved through the ranks and progressed, but there's been an issue around having somebody qualified to actually give them that accreditation. You know, a lack of accreditors, for want of a better word, to actually give them that qualification, which they have already earned. I think that was an issue coming from maybe that had to come from England or somewhere.
Yeah, currently there is one accrediting body signature. There was a deaf body set up, IBSL, is maybe what you're referring to. It get into financial difficulties and folded. Those students who had gone through IBSL didn't get their certificates. Maybe that's what you're referring to. And signature, then they had to re-engage with signature. There is also an issue for our ISL students at Foil Deaf Association, in that the NRCPD, which is a UK registration body, did not recognise or did not register ISL interpreters. They made the point, and it's a fair point, they're a fees subscription-based body, and they couldn't justify to interpreters in Durham, Surrey, Kent, whatever, that the additional cost for a handful, as they would say it, of ISL interpreters. So the department stepped in and funded the translation of their portal, and now they register ISL interpreters. Likewise with Queen's, we were waiting on the mapping environment being settled with Queen's with NRCPD, and we got confirmation this week that has been settled. So those students going through Queen's will be able to register with NRCPD. Foil Deaf Association and any other ISL interpreters will be able to register with NRCPD, and those students who went through IBSL are registering through Signature if they pass their qualifications, of course, their tests. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the good work that's going on.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Well, just to confirm, Tommy, you are using the Register of Irish Sign Language Interpreters for ISL, isn't that right?
That is our intention, and also it means that ISL students who qualify will be able to register in the South and with NRCPD.
Can I ask then, and this is in relation to Clause 4, can you explain why it's important that some of them are done by affirmative resolution of public functions, however the public bodies will be by negative resolution? Why is that? Why is there a difference there?
I will preface comments by saying the affirmative negative is something we are looking at through the bill and making sure it's consistent with itself and with First Legislative Council it's consistent with other approaches in other pieces of legislation. We feel the list of public bodies, as we've discussed, with the exception question mark of the schools piece, is going to be a pretty standard list of public bodies, of departments and their arm's length bodies. Every time a new body is created or a body changes its name or bodies merge, to think that for this particular list we need to come to affirmative resolution to us appears disproportionate. The issue of bodies of a public character, which we have agreed to take away further, we can see where there may be, it's not as clear cut. Whether that takes us towards affirmative rather than negative, and therefore splitting out of those two things, is something we are open to debate. But I think, as you heard from your previous discussion, Chair, we need to go away and look at that a little bit more around care homes and some examples. But we do feel, if I can go off-piste a moment, I do think somewhere in the legislative catalogue there should be a list of all public bodies that is maintained somehow centrally and everything else refers to. So we're not, every time a new commissioner is appointed or this is created or something changes its name, everybody is scrabbling around by negative resolution to change their list of prescribed bodies. And we had, in a very early draft of this, had the NIPSO Act 2016 and Public Service Ombudsman's Act, which lists a lot of public bodies. And that has been used by a number of other pieces of legislation, but for reasons to do with the complaints process, does not include Translink or NI Water because they have other mechanisms for complaints. So we lost organisations out of that. So we're having to start from scratch here, which doesn't seem a particularly efficient way of doing this when we're going to list Education Authority and libraries, NI and national museums. We could all write the list. Sorry, that's a little bit off-piste, but I make that point generally.
The list is essentially about providing access to public services, the same public bodies that we as hearing people access, so it's not contentious in our view. There'll be nothing on their hand, it'll just be deaf people accessing those public services as referenced in Clause 3 without cost.
Yeah.
Or inconvenience.
I'm still, so I get that in principle, but I'm still not clear why some of them are deemed better affirmative and some negative.
Maybe if I come in. Originally we intended, we could have just put in the primary that we capture all public bodies under 1F, the Interpretation Act. I think we could have put that, we actually put in the negative around the public bodies to give the committee scrutiny. I know it is a negative process, but it's still scrutiny. So that's why we're listing them, basically, so the committee can scrutinise them, other than putting them directly into the legislation. So there is that scrutiny. The reason why we were the negative particular to this one is because it is really public bodies. They are what they are. The public bodies, they're non-controversial. We can all list them and all name them. I mean, the only objection to going on that list would be for that public body to say we're not a public body. You know, so I mean, basically, the names that we've mentioned, you know, there wouldn't be any of them that wouldn't describe themselves as public bodies, so they'd be on the list. The other reason for the negative is because we can make them regulations really quickly, and with the guidance, we need to consult with all the prescribed organisations before we publish the guidance. Now, that means if we do it through negative, a couple of days after royal assent, we can have those regulations made through the negative procedure, and then go out and consult directly with those public bodies who have been listed as prescribed organisations. So that gives us, Bill, is kick straight in. If we put that through the affirmative process, then we'd have to come through the committee, the SL1 process, then make the regulations. So you may be 2 or 3 months down the line, and then we could go out and consult. So we can't consult until we list these public bodies as prescribed organisations. We can't consult on the guidance, and the guidance is the main factor of this bill. You know, this is what's going to make this bill work, the guidance.
Yes.
So that is the rationale for going for the negative. It's non-controversial. We can do it quickly, and then therefore we can act quickly and get the consultation out to all these prescribed bodies.
Okay, so I get you're saying sort of flexibility and speed. However, on the counter, that committee is interested in all scrutiny. So we'll think about that. We'll think about that. You've set out the reasons. We'll give it some thought.
I would also add, Chair, that at the moment in clause 10 around accreditation, it's listed as negative. Again, advice from Legislative Council, there is the potential of fees in there. It doesn't say there will be fees. The norm when anything that could have fees attached is it's affirmative. So we are going back through with a fine-tooth comb all of those negative and affirmative and just check they sit with precedent and protocol, if you like.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly go back. You'd mentioned, and I thought we had dealt with sort of fairly comprehensively around the schools piece at the start, Department for Education. You mentioned there again, Ian, about the public bodies, with the exception of the schools piece. I hope that there will be no countenancing of just because the Department of Education are considering whether they should or not. Would your department consider allowing them off the hook in any sense in this?
Sorry, I was saying everything is straightforward except we're still discussing schools. Sorry, it wasn't to say they're out.
But are you discussing them as to whether they're in or out as prescribed organisation?
I think for some of the schools who may be not run through the Education Authority directly, there are genuine questions where we need to take into account the views of the Department of Education, because that is just as somebody was going to come and do something in the housing space, the Department for Communities would feel it a bit askance if the Department of Education went off and regulated for something in the housing space. We need to give them their place. We know we need to bring this to a conclusion sooner rather than later as well. And we do recognise we have heard loud and clear the views of the committee and indeed witnesses in front of you about the particular challenges within the school setting.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Okay, so we're going to be meeting again, clearly, as we work our way through this process, but I do appreciate the briefing you've sent us and your attendance here today and addressing those questions on members' behalf, and we'll take those away and consider are there further questions or other issues we want to raise with you. But thank you for that, Ian, Tommy and Gerard.
Thank you very much, committee.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, members, can you just check then if there's anything arising from that members want to flag up as a potential action point? Clerk, was there anything in relation to, so there was some of Maurice's questions were touched upon but maybe need to be followed up on, and there are some of the questions maybe here that we didn't get to. Maybe we'll put those in to the department.
Yep, I'm happy to look at those.
So there's a couple of other wee points, members, then that I wanted to flag with you.
Yeah.
So in terms of follow-up, as a follow-up action based on feedback that I got from last week's event with young people, and we did hear it in the Shannon chamber as well in relation to this particular issue, but I propose we write to the Assembly Commission seeking confirmation on the preparedness of Parliament buildings here to assist guests and visitors with hearing loss to evacuate in an emergency. This was raised by one of the young people last week who said, if I'm in a bathroom somewhere and the fire alarm goes off, so I'm saying that we should be moving as a building, as an assembly and institution here to ensure that we're ahead of the game and that people here are safe. All people are safe. So Members agreed with that?
Agreed.
Andy, go ahead.
Can I just declare an interest as Assembly Commission member, please?
Yep, thank you, Andy. The other thing that members received legal advice from ESR in relation to the delegated powers set out in the bill, but I don't think we've asked for legal advice in relation to any human rights implications associated with the bill. Given the interest we have heard from in recent weeks, are you content that we seek legal advice in relation to any human rights implications within this bill? Members content? Thank you. Any other follow-up actions then? Either clerk or members, was that you picked up at clerk? Members content otherwise? Okay.
Before we go on, I just have something to add from the previous session, just in terms of the minister. Is it okay to bring that up now? Just
yeah,
in
go
terms
ahead.
of the follow-up.
Yeah.
Just it has come to my attention that there's a Belfast Telegraph article around that issue that I brought up about bands funding. It's a quote from the Arts Council that says, "It is not the role of the Arts Council of Northern Ireland to determine whether an eligible band can or cannot attend a parade deemed legal by the Parades Commission, for example the Brian Robinson Memorial Parade. The Arts Council does not have a role to further investigate or designate whether to fund a band beyond the eligible applications received." That to me flies a little bit in the face of what the minister had said, in that I set out my policy, it's absolutely up to the Arts Council. They're seemingly saying whether a band participates in parades that is deemed offensive by some and not offensive to others. There doesn't seem to be any clarity there at all. And I think later on down they talk about referring it to the Office of Identity and Cultural Expression, the newly formed NI executive body. I mean, if the minister is saying that it's up to the Arts Council is saying it's not up to us, referred to this new Office of Identity and Cultural Expression. I just think that there's something there that we just need to get to the bottom of in terms of that scrutiny. At the end of the day, the minister was very clear, and I was really grateful for how clear he was in terms of if you're marching under and any symbology related to paramilitarism or terrorism is not acceptable in this day and age. I think he was really clear on that. It doesn't sound to me as if the Arts Council have any criteria or policy to be able to follow through what the minister has said.
What are you suggesting?
Can we write potentially, I know that we have done before, but I think that we need to follow up with the Arts Council in terms of where they find their guidance from, but then also refer back to the department and actually say, when you said that it's up to the Arts Council have actually said in this article that it's not within their gift.
We had said that earlier stage, and we would see what they were saying and potentially look at getting them in. Do you think that would be useful that we get them in?
I think it would. I just think there needs to be a wee bit of clarity here, especially given that the minister's been so clear.
Yeah, members content. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Chair, just to declare an interest of a family member as a member of the Arts Council, but also to say quite content with the proposal to write to both Arts Council and the Department for clarity.
Were you going to say something?
No, I just agree with Sharon.
Okay, members agreed. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay. Okay, members, so we now need our interpreters to finish up in the green room, so we'll take another quick...
Finished?
But given we are finished.
Yeah. 1 minute. It's just a pause
Okay,
rather than a break.
we'll take a quick pause then,
Yeah.
just to allow the interpreters to finish up, and we'll come back into broadcasting in a minute or two.
Committee Room 29, Sound. Committee Room 29, Sound. Committee Room 29, Sound. Committee Room 29, Sound. Committee Room 29, Sound.
Matters arising. So there's a large number of items to get through matters arising this week, members, and the memo is at page 64. I intend to draw out or consider the items by number and ask if you want to draw out or highlight or seek any briefings in relation to any of the specific items of correspondence. So first of all, can I deal with items 9.2 to 9.7? If I can just say item 9.2 is a response from Cricket Ireland requesting an opportunity to brief the committee. And I know I have previously flagged up some very good work that Cricket Ireland are engaged in, and I think it's something that we should hear from, but would members be contented?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll schedule that. Items 9.3 to 9.5 are a series of responses from local councils in relation to this committee's request about their local development plans. Do members have any comments in relation to those items? Yeah, members content with that, okay. Moving on then to item 9.6 is a reply from the Minister of Health in relation to our disability and work strategy, on the disability and work strategy and placements. Do members have any comments on 9.6 there? Content to note. Yeah. In relation to 9.7 to 9.10, which are a series of replies from the department. So 9.7 to 9.10.
7, Chair.
Yes, Melissa, go ahead.
In relation to that initiative I've raised to as local government spokesperson, in terms of the cost actually having to be borne, we'll say, by council in relation to the dilapidation bill. So do we have some maybe clarity on that and how it is that the department is going to step up to the plate there and provide that assistance?
Yep, members content. Yeah. Nicola?
Just to move on to 9.9 there, this corresponds by the social inclusion strategies. Now, I know we've spoken to this already in the meeting, but basically we'd asked for detailed timelines of where they were, and I know we're going to go back to the department and ask for that again, but we didn't really get it in that response. But the Minister did say about the importance of stakeholder engagement. So basically, if it's so essential, why are they not liaising, pardon me, with the co-design groups that have put so much work into it? So I suppose I'm just making a point rather than asking him to explain that there, but if we could go back to them to ask for that detailed timetable.
Yeah, thank you.
On all of the social strategies?
Please.
Item 9.10 there is the response from the department on the Shared Prosperity Fund, which I referred to in Chair's business. Local Growth Fund will be a capital-based fund. I think that has created serious concern within the sector, and I wonder, do members have any comments or actions to suggest flowing from that?
Sure, if it's
Go ahead,
possible. I think this is an absolute disaster. To have a 70% ratio of capital base is not listening to what the sector needs and what the sector told us, whether that's via the those who deliver the employment support or that entrepreneurial side with our business support. None of them have told us that they need more capital or more infrastructure. They have said we need project costs, we need programme costs, we need to be able to actually fund and continue our services. So I don't know whether, I mean, for me, whenever we look at this, it falls under the Department for Communities, but there's also a huge link into the Department for Economy and the Department for Finance, and I wonder, would it be worth us writing either to the committees of Finance and Economy to ask, what are they seeing coming through their department and their committee around the issue of the Local Growth Fund, and whether there's something like a joint letter from those three ministers, whether that is ongoing. I think it would just be good to hear what joined up work is going on with those departments that are most relevant, because this is going to be absolutely disastrous come May 26 for those organisations. Yeah.
And just to declare the interest that I was involved as part of our team in bringing forward a motion in relation to this issue this week in the Assembly, but I think that we should ask to be kept updated on this, and that the Department for Communities should write to all the community and voluntary organisations, providing them with an update and encouraging them to work with the Department to mitigate any difficulties, so that there's no cliff edge. This is all considered and worked through, if members are content with both Sean's and
just
mine.
that joined up approach from both department and the voluntary community sector, I think, is going to be essential in lobbying the UK Treasury and the UK government.
And I think as well for each department to know their roles. And I think the answer even from the Minister earlier was very much so going, this is with Department of Finance going, but really this department has a huge role to play as well. So for them all to take it serious and the responsibility is serious.
Yep, members content and clerk.
So can I just check, there's a letter to both the Committee for Economy and Finance in relation to the Local Growth Fund and whether they would be agreeable to a joint letter going from all three committees, and then a letter from the department, or we're asking the department to write to the community voluntary sector stakeholders and provide clarity in relation to the March 26th cliff edge.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, members content with that? Content, yeah. Okay, members, moving on to items 9.11 to 9.14.
It's just an issue 9.11, Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Melissa.
And again, too, just given the seriousness of the issues that were raised there and what in fact was an anonymous letter, but notwithstanding that we note that the partnership meeting is to take place on the 27th of November, and they're actually the body that would consider that as well too, but that we should ensure we have a response from them. And that the proper HR procedures are being adopted and that by the museums.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's, for me, a wee bit worrying that it is maybe another 5 or 6 weeks that takes place. I think it's 5 or 6 or more weeks ago when we flagged it, so it seems quite a delay there if there are serious issues, but I think certainly an update would be useful when they do this partnership meeting, if members are content. Releases. Yeah. Anything else in 9.11 to 9.14? Okay. 9.14. We have already sought that legal advice, I think, so that's okay.
Did we ask for legal advice on that one, or was that for the department? Do you have clarity? Maybe we need legal advice on this as well.
We haven't. We received this letter after the committee agreed the previous action, so this is whether or not you want to ask for legal advice on whether or not officials can still brief if there is a pending JR. Is that what your question is?
I think, yeah, we should, because following the Minister's briefing, we asked just for an update on meetings, wasn't that it? But it was legal advice in regards to the football fund.
Yeah.
So maybe if we seek now legal advice in this regard and what they can actually, what information they can give us if a judicial review is ongoing.
And at what point it becomes, what point it becomes an issue of sub judice.
And that it could maybe be done in closed session if necessary, that type of thing.
And through the Chair, just on 9.13, in relation to the climate change action plan, would it be the case that we'd be maybe better briefed, we'll say, by DERA in relation to just what in fact is happening there, given that climate change, is what we know, it's, whilst this department too would have an impact, but DERA in particular are better placed to brief this committee.
9.13, sorry, Melissa.
Yeah. I suppose I always do wonder around where that line sits in terms of another department coming in, but it may be in this case that this is one that we could ask.
Somebody can ask for a briefing.
Yeah, sure.
It's given the importance of that. Okay, members. Okay, then from 9.11 to 9.14, we're moving on to 9.15 to 9.19. So item 9.16 within that block is a response from the department to the committee's request for an oral briefing on the findings from the Benefit and Fraud Error Task and Finish Group. The department has confirmed that officials will attend the meeting on the 20th of November, but has requested the evidence session be held in closed session due to the sensitive operational detail contained in the report. Are members content that that session be held in closed session?
I'm just not, sorry, Chair. Well, it's important that we get the session. It's a significant issue, but I'm just unsure as to what sensitive operational detail, unless it's how they actually conduct investigations. I mean, they don't mind publishing the sensitive detail of people who've been found guilty of fraud, but maybe the sensitive detail is just the extent of error
Well, maybe what we suggest. So I'm a wee bit uncomfortable with this myself. I have to say this is a very important. The minister has outlined a very important piece of work. If there is some particularly sensitive issue that can't be shared in open session, then we can possibly do a section of it in closed. But I think if we're going to scrutinise, and the public have a right to know what the ministers and the department's plans are in this regard, so I think it'll be more appropriate to find out further detail on that, and then to consider whether or not we move into closed for a portion of the meeting, if we think that's necessary. Maybe that's a better approach.
Yeah,
Can we check that with the department?
Yeah, I can go back and ask. Yeah.
So, Chair, for clarity, we're asking the clerk to go away and dig a wee bit more to see
to find
the
out
complexity of it, to see what way it could.
To express that the committee would like to undertake scrutiny of it, and that would be an open session unless there's a particularly sensitive issue that would require the committee to close.
Which, get any explanation, and there may well be issues to justify that. So,
okay,
yeah,
can ask for that in advance.
Okay, thank you, members. So, any other comments on items 9.5 to 9.19? No. So moving on then to item 9. Items 9.19 to 9.24. Are these all tabled? Are they? Or are these contained within the main package?
There's 29 matters around.
29, okay.
Yeah.
So item 9.24 is a response from the department on the corporate identity and DFC changing languages on logos. And as I mentioned to the minister when he was here, they weren't able to give us any information about what that cost was. So, any thoughts on that, members? Should we? It still doesn't make sense to me, I have to say.
Sorry, what item is that?
So 9.24. 9.24.
Oh yeah, which you asked about earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was one of the reasons for cutting it, wasn't it? The cost. So I think we should be able to ask again or get some more detail or something if the reason was for savings. Like where have they come up with this? Where is the figure?
I wonder, should we ask for the process that was involved in removing these logos and what evidence was brought to that, because it seems extremely unclear. The rationale that's been provided hasn't stood up in relation to this correspondence. So can we ask them? Maybe we should ask for a full detail of the minutes and processes of any meetings that were involved in the removal of the logos from the department's website. Members content with that?
I think that the really important context in all of this is that this is the department that is in charge of language provision, promotion. Any other department, I think that it's not quite as important to be showcasing the language. So I think that's for me the context within which this feels slightly strange. If there isn't, if this is cost neutral, I just don't understand what's to be gained. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'll just make a comment on that. As you say, showcasing the language, and it's important for any language to be visible. And I know even too for language learners, it's amazing, that in particular I'm talking here about, say, the Irish language, how people can develop their own understanding from road signage, that whenever we see it displayed in Irish, which includes, to use an Irish term, the genitive case, and that for learners, students and the likes of it broadens their knowledge in every respect of the language, gives us all a knowledge of where it is that we live, and even our own landscape or whatever, how it describes it. So it's unfortunate that even on something as simple as documentation is issued by a department, that they should choose to remove language on documentation. I think that's very petty, and I really cannot even imagine what cost-saving returns will be as a result of that.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. You're content with the
Yep.
request. So moving on then, members, to items 9.25 to 9.28, and there's a few here that I do need to just draw out before I go to members. So 9.6 and 9.27 are drafts of responses to committees on separate bills which have a crossover with the Department for Communities remit. Item 9.26 is to the Committee for Finance on the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. The deadline for response for that is Thursday, the 30th of October. Are members content with the committee response as drafted? Yeah, content, thank you. Item 9.27 is to the ERA Committee on the Dilapidation Bill. The deadline for that response is Friday, 24th of October. Do members have any comments on either items or are content with the responses drafted? Content, members? Members content? Yeah. Thank you. Item 9.28 is a ministerial reply on the subject of the NI Football Fund. However, it doesn't answer the series of questions, and that's been touched on again there. It sets out the fact that the Minister's briefed the committee 5 times, which is fantastic, but it didn't. None of those briefings provided that information that we sought, and that is therefore to some extent irrelevant. Any other comments then before we decide what and we have letters in progress on this issue, so let's just bear that in mind. But any other comments on 9.28? No. We have the letter away to the department for those following up those specific pieces of information.
We have a letter that is just issued based on the legal advice last week, which reminded committee that it should exercise its powers under the 21 Act, but and that has gone. And today, committee has agreed for a couple more people requests for legal advice on what else we can ask for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, members. Anything else, members, between 9.25 to 9.28? Otherwise, content. Thank you, members. I'll move on then to agenda item 9, which is correspondence. And the correspondence memo is at page 198. So, members, I would now intend to consider the items by number in blocks and ask if you want to draw out, highlight or seek briefings in relation to any of the specific items of correspondence. So, do members have any comments on items 10.2 to 10.6?
Just 10.3, that offer from Ulster Rugby to host us for a committee meeting. As I said at the last committee meeting, I did attend a rugby game at Ravenhill, and I would certainly be happy to go and do that there. So, if other members were happy, we could maybe look into it for the forward work programme.
Yeah, we can add to Railing Sport as obviously a huge benefit, and it's good to be able to engage and encourage and work with all those sporting organisations. So that's members are quite content with that, I would say. Any other issues from 10.2 to 10.6, members? No. Moving on then to item are members content then in relation to an individual regarding a housing issue at 10.2? Are members content that a response is sent to the individual indicating that the committee cannot act on an individual's behalf and suggest they contact the housing supplier directly or their local MLA? Members content? Thank you. Item 10.3, the Deputy Chair has covered. Item 10.5 is correspondence from the Department regarding consequential amendments to a series of social security laws as a result of changes being made to carers assistance. So this is laws here, and it's a result of changes being made to carers assistance via the Scotland Act, which now means Scotland will diverge from parity in some aspects of social security. This is another example of a statutory instrument being progressed via Westminster, where committee might normally expect to see a parity bill or a proposal for a stat rule to be made here. Do members have any comments, or would we be content to request a briefing?
We'd like a briefing if possible.
Yeah, it could be some very complex issues within these things. I think it's becoming more and more of a concern around things that are happening in Westminster, maybe without due regard to the complexities of the situation here. Members content then to request a briefing? Yeah. Any other points within that block before we go to 10.7 to 10.11? So moving to 10.7 to 10.11 in correspondence, I want to draw out one in terms of 10.9. It's a similar one. It's correspondence from the Department regarding NI child maintenance and social security legislation following enactment of the Education Scotland Act. It's another example of an SI change being made in Westminster. Do members similarly want to request a briefing? Yep, members content. Thank you.
To the Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
10.8.
Yep.
In relation to the rate support grant, I think we should probably invite officials to discuss the recommendations and which ones the Minister accepts, which ones he doesn't. Because I know that from the council that I come from, they very much depend on the rate support grant. and that well, there's a lot of questions there to be answered in relation to it, and there's a great dependence on it as well. So I would prefer further information in relation to that.
Yeah, I'd be in support of that as well. I know there are a number of sort of more rural councils who have a much narrower rates base, and it really impacts them very significantly. So I think that's a valid concern for us as a committee. So members content, seek that briefing. Thank
From
you.
officials in relation to that annexed report, yeah, and which recommendations are going to be accepted and not.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Members, then you have also been provided with a table correspondence memo at page 38 of your table papers. Do members have any comments on items 10.13 to 10.15? And before I come to members, can I draw out the fact that 10.13 is correspondence from the clerk to the Committee for Infrastructure and a relating paper from RAISE. The letter is seeking the views of all statutory committees on the Water, Sustainable Drainage and Flood Management Bill. Do members agree to review the bill from Infrastructure and also agree that the committee team here review and draft a response for committee consideration if appropriate?
I think it is very appropriate from this committee. We've talked about it before in terms of even if the Minister was given millions of pounds tomorrow, he couldn't build all the social houses that we want because of our lack of sustainable drainage, our lack of wastewater management. So I think that this is a really relevant bill to the work of this committee. So we'd be more than happy with that, Chair.
Yep.
Chair, just to declare an interest, I am on the Infrastructure Committee as well, so I'm scrutinising that through that committee.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, members otherwise content as outlined there? Yeah. Anything else from 10.13 to 10.15, members on the table? No, thank you. Okay, members, moving to forward work programme then, a copy of which is at page 432. Do members have any comments, or are you content to note the forward work programme as drafted? Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thanks members. Agenda item 12 then, any other business? And there is one item that I would like to very much draw out today, and that is that this is, I believe, going to be Sean's last meeting in the Department for Communities here. I know Sean has been a stalwart of this community, this committee and this work for a very long period of time. I have to say, I have found his knowledge, his expertise and his support invaluable, both in committee and between committees, and I want to very much wish Sean all the best in any future role, and to record our appreciation of your work, experience and knowledge in relation to communities, Sean. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I also want to, in the same vein, welcome Victoria, then, who's coming in to Sean's to take over that work. So, Victoria, you're very, very welcome to committee. Okay, have members any other business they wish to raise today? No, thank you. Okay, then, members, I will move to item 13, agenda item 13, which is date, time, and location of the next meeting. Our next meeting will be at 10 a.m. on Thursday, 6th of November, 2025, here in room 29.
Yeah, just to give my apology for that meeting, and I'll be here.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Okay, so that's 6th of November, room 29, here at 10 a.m. members. The meeting is now adjourned, and thank you and good luck and more to all of you. Thank you.
Committee Room 29, sound. 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 Committee Room 29, sound.